special meeting of the Bellflower City Council. It's Monday, May 3rd, 2021. It's 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Before we begin, please note that all public meetings will be recorded. When a participant logs in via their computer or calls in to join the meeting, their name and or phone number will be visible to all participants. Unless you are providing public comment, your audio will be muted and your video will be disabled. Persons wishing to be audience members to this meeting may do so anonymously. Anonymous participants, however, will not be recognized for public comment. Persons who seek to bypass the city's host controls will be dropped and blocked from the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation. Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
Councilmember Santinas. Mayor Pro Tem Dutton. Councilmember Hamada.
Here.
Mayor Coops.
Here. All right, public. So let the record show that all members are present of the City Council. Public comments, Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to excuse the absence of Mayor Pro Tem Dunn.
Didn't he say here?
No,
He did not
I didn't
respond
hear
to
him
roll
say
call.
here.
Oh, well, you know, half the time he's on, and I figure if I don't hear anything, that means that the rest of you heard it. So he's not participating, huh?
No.
So that's gonna be my motion.
Second.
So there's a motion by Mr. Santinas to excuse the attendance of this meeting. Is there a second?
Second by Hamada.
All right, second by Mr. Hamada. Without objection, that'll be the order.
Thank you.
Public comments, Mr. Stewart.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3A, the public may address the City Council on matters listed on the agenda. Those wishing to speak on an agenda item must utilize one of the methods listed on page 2 of the agenda. You will be given 3 minutes to address the City Council. Attempts to provide comment at times not designated on the agenda may result in the city dropping you from the meeting.
If you'd like to speak, please use the raised hand feature. If by computer, it appears under the Participants tab. If by phone app, it'll appear under the More button at the bottom right-hand corner. Or if by telephone, press the number 6 to raise your hand. You will be called upon in the order received. You can then unmute your microphone so that you can provide your comments. Do we have any public comments this afternoon?
Mary, let me give them a moment for the public to utilize the feature. I don't see any raised hands at this time.
Thank you, Myra. Moving on to 4A, Mr. Stewart, would you announce what we're going to do today?
This is the first of several budget study sessions. The study session will review budget proposals from each department for fiscal years 2021 through 2023. Individual department directors may present major budget changes and projects for the City Council consideration. The Director of Finance will also provide revenue estimates and other major items for the new fiscal years. Council members may provide general input and direction regarding the draft budget. A separate meeting will be held to consider adopting a final budget later in the process. So what we're going to do today is Mr. Ree is going to present the budget overall, and then we'll make the significant revenue forecast, and the department heads and staff will be on hand to answer any specific questions you might have about the different departments in the city. So I will turn it over to Mr. Ree.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. To start with the budget calendar, this is our very first council study session. We'll start from 2 to 5:30 this afternoon. And we have second budget study session scheduled for this Thursday, 2 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. By May 17th, Monday, we'd like to receive City Council's proposed projects and programs, as well as other budget changes. And we'll compile the list and do the necessary research. And we would like the council to vote on those proposed budget changes on Monday, May 24th, from 2 to 5 p.m. The budget will be scheduled for adoption at the regular city council meeting on June 14th. Throughout the budget study session, please discuss at any time any projects and programs city council would like to add to the budget. The draft budget is proposed total $119 million over the course of the next 2 years. First year budget is about $62 million and second year is $57 million. Operating costs total 51%, salaries, benefits, and taxes total 26%, capital outlay 19%, and debt service is 4%. In terms of appropriations by function, the top three are public safety at 26%, public works at 18%, capital projects at 18%. This shows 3 years of actual data from 2017-18, as well as 3 years of subsequent budget through 2022-2023. The large fluctuations are generally caused by capital projects, but in fiscal year 2019-20, as you're aware, we added New Hope temporary shelter services, and Choto is also causing a large fluctuation in the budget area. This chart shows a list of funds that we have to budget, as well as balance. All the funds balance except for Fund 012, Public Projects Fund, and this will be discussed at a later slide. Also, you're aware Bellflower has been allocated approximately $22.8 million from Federal American Rescue Plan funding. We don't have any recommendation as to the use of these funds because we don't have the Treasury guidance just yet, but we should be receiving half of the funding in May and another half next year, also in May about. And the expenditure deadline is 3.5 years from now, by December 31st, 2024. The preliminary eligible uses include responding and mitigating COVID-19 emergency, providing aids to households, businesses, and nonprofits for negative economic impacts caused by COVID-19, and infrastructure investments, specifically water, sewer, and broadband, as well as revenue losses due to COVID-19. We're not quite sure how this calculation is to be made, but we don't expect too much funding under this category. This ARP funding cannot be used for a tax cut to be paid out of, as well as paying for the cost of the pension. To start with the general fund is the largest and the most important fund of the city. Our estimate for the next year is $40.9 million in revenues, and the second budget year, $42.2 million of revenue for the general fund. The appropriations as requested, first budget year total $39.8 million and $41.2 million in the second budget year. We are making two adjustments. One is set aside for labor group negotiations that are currently pending. First year, we're setting aside $240,000, and second year, $490,000. And also, we have a successor agency loan repayment that we're using annually, $500,000 to pay down the pension and fund liability. Accounting for these adjustments, first year budget surplus is about $1.4 million, and second year budget surplus for the general fund is $986,000. General fund revenues are coming in strong. Major M sales tax will be collected in full in the first budget year 2021-22, and our current estimate is $4.5 million. Sales tax is higher because of the new business additions and internet sales, and cannabis and property taxes are also coming in strong. Franchise fees are higher because of the recent refuse franchise fee increase. However, there are some revenue decreases because of park closures, concession and rent revenue decreases, lower interest earnings, transit and occupancy tax decreases, and other decreases. However, overall, next fiscal year's estimated revenues for the general fund are higher than this fiscal year's budgeted revenues by $7.7 million. Our cannabis tax rates are scheduled to increase in 2 months on July 1st. Most significant change is the dispensary or retail tax increase, which will go from 7.5% to 10%. Our closest competition is City of Long Beach, and its tax rate is 8% for the dispensary and retail. Our cannabis tax revenue estimate for next year is based on 8% tax rate, just in case the city council wishes to remain competitive with the City of Long Beach. Overall, our general fund budget request is higher by $4.4 million for next fiscal year. The department heads will explain their major budget increases and other changes in the subsequent slides. Other significant items include capital projects funding of $500,000 per year, funding of the New Hope temporary shelter services of $1.8 million per year with general fund revenues instead of general fund reserve as we had it before, and funding a public projects fund in the amount of $2.28 million annually for the next 3 years. This will be explained later on slide 14. This slide shows New Hope temporary shelter service costs since inception. For the next 2 years, the $2.3 million annual costs will be paid out of the general fund in the amount of $1.8 million and pay with HCD PLHA grant of $514,000 a year. In anticipation of the sale of the municipal water system, Resolution number 16-53 was adopted to create the fund called Public Projects Fund. And the projects shown on the slide, the main event center and fire museum, aquatic center improvements, Bank of the West building acquisition, soccer field design, and soccer field construction. These projects were funded and encumbered with the anticipated sales proceeds. However, with the current legal challenge, PUC approval and the ultimate sale of the municipal water system are still uncertain. As a result, we recommend that the total project costs that are spent and encumbered of $6.8 million be funded with the general fund revenues by transferring $2.28 million annually over the next 3 years. Currently, we have 82 full-time positions. We're requesting to add 1 full-time position, recreation coordinator. This position will assist with special events, programming, as well as administration. And we have approximately 100 positions for part-time. This chart shows available general fund reserve for the past 14 years since 2006-07. As you can see, the general fund reserve is fairly strong. As of last fiscal year, we had $8 million for contingency, $7.9 million available, and $2.6 million for property held for sale, resale, and development, as well as deposit for property acquisition. Now we have individual departments budget changes, and city manager will present his department.
The changes in the city manager's department are pretty simple. It's basically based on the contract services and the amount of surveying that we're going to do or not do. And the only changes that we have is the net first year is minus 2.6%, which is $40,000. And then the increase, the net change over the next year because of the surveys that we're going to do, mainly the $40,000 and $24,000 will come in at $96,029 or 6.3% over. There are no other changes to the city manager's budget.
The changes in the city clerk's office budget just reflect the fluctuation of the election years. And in this year, you'll see the money set aside for the redistricting process as well. There are no other changes.
For finance, we are proposing to do one activities, which is comprehensive user fee update with cost allocation plan. We're requesting funding of $40,000. We're currently working on developer fee update, and once that's completed, we'll present it to the council for consideration. In the category of non-departmental, we're requesting $50,000 funding for insurance premiums related to property coverage for fire and earthquake. And also, we're asking $150,000 in the first year for network, server, hardware, and software upgrades, and another $100,000 for the second year for the same purpose. We're also asking $75,000 a year for desktops and laptop replacements, and that'll be 30 units each year. Next is public safety.
Yes, I'll just quickly go through the list also. The decrease in salaries and so forth was a result of part-time hours were a little bit down last year, as well as we did lose an employee who was retired and was in at a higher salary than CSO, having been transferred from a different department several years ago. What's being proposed for adding 2 SAOs. Historically, the city's been as many as 11 SAOs way back. We've been down to 4 for a number of years, and we're proposing to go back up to 6, adding 2 more. Now, the Sheriff's Department creates an incentive for adding to a program, some of you know. So it's called a growth rate, which is about 31% cheaper than the standard annual rate. So we're guaranteed to have that lower pricing for 1 full fiscal year. And one of the tricks, I've mentioned it before, that you do, or we do, or I do, is you start the new person a couple of months into a fiscal year, and you get all the remaining 10 months then at that good price, plus the whole 12 months next year, because you have to have 1 full fiscal year. So if we pull that little trick, we can save $378,000 on the cost of a regular item over the course of those 22 months. So it's well worth the effort, and it's not it's been done a number of times in a number of cities over the years. I've also put in a fairly significant increase in overtime, trying to increase largely our traffic enforcement. The good news with overtime budget is you have flexibility on when and where it gets used, as well as being a lesser cost. Overtime dollar an overtime hour costs us for an SAO, for instance, $92 an hour. But when they're working their regular shift with all of the other overheads of the department included, it's $155 an hour. So if you maintain a robust overtime budget, one has the ability to, save money effectively, as well as target the kinds of places that those hours are spent, because the overtime would only be given for certain purposes rather than just, more generally spread. So that's what the overtime increase looks like. And the piece of good news, with the Sheriff's Department rate increase of only 1.45%, I've never seen it that low, quite honestly. I was expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of $468,000 worth of increase, and we're lining up with $169,000, which we'll call it good news. And then security guard, you can see we continue to find and people continue to ask for more services from the security guard, days, nights, weekends, certain stops. So I put some money to keep that going, increasing that, but recognize that I'm not one of those people that because it's there, I'm going to spend it. If we don't have a need, we'll save the money at the end of the year and put it back in the general fund. We will spend what we need, but I thought it'd be nice to create some extra room there for the flexibility of that guard. We even used them on cruise night, you may recall, to close down the parking structure and different things that are, increasing their range of duties. And the LESD digital computers, license plate readers, that's a fixed cost. Some of this is leasing to buy, so we will anticipate several $1,000s worth of decrease very soon. But both the license plate readers and the MDCs have been shown to be very important pieces of equipment for us. So there's that. Elimination of probation officer worked out very well for us. We were able to cancel the item, but still maintain the substation as his field office. So we see him multiple times a day. He still provides service for us, specifically as a function of being part of the county. And we'll help him with the SAOs occasionally, and he'll be running stuff, information for us and dealing with people. So that's quite a savings without really feeling the loss, in my view. And those are my comments on that.
Next one is economic development.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. For the next 2-year budget cycle for economic development, we are just really going to ask for an additional $100,000 a year to add to our economic development fund or account. And that is typically used for the business assistance program, where we do the facade improvements and the building improvements and so forth. Prior to the last budget, it was reduced to $100,000 a year, and we were just want to get it back up to that level of $220,000 a year. You may notice here it's a negative, and that's because earlier in the year we requested a budget amendment for this current fiscal year's budget and brought it up to $340,000 for this fiscal year. And so it appears to be a reduction in the budget when actually it's an increase from the original budget last year. So that's for both fiscal years. And we went over the CDBG and home and SHA activities at our public hearing last council meeting. And if there's any other questions other than that, we're a status quo budget.
Next department is planning.
Good afternoon. So for my budget, the majority of the increases are coming from our contract services. Our housing element update is due by this October. So that is a $100,000 expense. I will note that we are getting money through 2 grants, through the SB2 and the LEAP grants. And then on top of that, we do have an increase in GIS services. We are looking at upgrading our aerials and several of the map layers to coincide with all the changes that are needed for the housing element. And that is an increase of about $20,000. And again, that is funded through a LEAP grant. Regarding our nuisance abatement, as you may be aware, we are moving forward with abatements of vacant lots, and our budget has slightly increased by $40,000. And then the last two items, one is the fire marshal services. As you know, we do have our own fire marshal. He does conduct inspections here and there, and there is a slight increase in that of $10,000. And then lastly, for our grading plan check services, I will note there's no changes specifically to this contract. When I was going through the budget this round, I did notice that Jerry and Lori's contract for grading services wasn't properly accounted for. So I did include that back into the budget. And then you'll see in the next fiscal year following that, there is a decrease because we should be done with our housing element update in year 2. And that's all I had.
Okay. Next is Parks and Recreation.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. For year 1, my ultimate goal was to get us back to where we were originally budgeted last budget cycle. You'll know due to COVID, we're still very limited in what we can program, our rentals, our staffing capacity. We're still nowhere near where we need to be. So with that said, you'll see first year a decrease in salaries, wages, and benefits. And that's just with just our programming is so limited still. We're going back to the original budget year of previous cycle as far as our part-time wages. We still don't know where we're going to be, so we are kind of shooting in the dark here with part-time wages because it's all going to depend on what we're allowed to program and staff our facilities. You'll also see a decrease in our adult sports leagues. Those programs were dying out significantly over the past several years. So we are using this opportunity to reset. If we do feel there is a major demand and need for that, we will look for alternatives to bring that back during next budget cycle. But for right now, there will be no adult softball and no adult basketball leagues in the budget. You'll also see a decrease in special interest programs. And what that is our contract classes. So your karate classes, your yoga, your fitness, everything we contract out with instructors. And that decreases because we're not able to do that yet. And that's also reflected in the revenue for our department. And I'll go over that in just a second in year 2. You'll see what is our standard contract increase for the dial-a-ride and fixed route. So that's in there. And then an increase in equipment replacement charges. And most of these things for the increase in equipment replacement charges are what we used as cost savings when we cut everything out because of COVID in the last budget cycle. So these are not new items. They are things that were needed for the Aquatic Center, for all of our parks, just general equipment we already had budgeted, and we took that cost savings out to save during the pandemic. For year 1, the 2 major increases for equipment replacement. One is the annual upgrades, which we've been doing for Christmas lights and decorations. But what we're also doing and proposing is LED lights for some of the new decorations in downtown, 30 in year 1, and then in year 2, it'll be 10 new decorations. So we continue to get feedback from the community that they want more and more, even though we've continued to invest. So we did put that in there for the annual decorations. The other one is the brim replacement van and trailer. That's for 1 unit. We have 2 units because one of them is for special events. And so we budgeted $75,000. My fingers are crossed that we will not have to use that money because we did get moved along a grant process to one of the top 10 that we're hoping that we get that paid for through a federal grant as well. So Those are the major changes for year one. We go to year two, and we have an increase in salaries and wages. So first on this list is adding one full-time position. This is something we've needed for a long time in our department. We've been at capacity for the past several years as far as our ability to grow programming and grow special events. And along with that, we are moving into probably the next 5 to 10 years being heavily inundated with grant administration, grant applications. And I really need to move our recreation manager more into a strategic role and administrating grants and pull her away from the day-to-day tactical things that she's doing. So this new position would report directly to the recreation manager and take on a lot of different roles with special events, programming, and administration, and just give us that breathing room that we've needed for several years to really start growing. And there's some exciting things on the horizon for our department and for the city, and we want to just be in the best position to do that. And then another large chunk of that is the standard adjustments and merit increases for our part-time wages. So now we're hoping year two, we're back to normal. We will start seeing those increases again. And I'll remind the city council that also we're not done yet with our minimum wage increases. So we're at $14 and we are moving up to $15 January. After that, it'll be connected to CPI. So there may never be an end to the minimum wage increase, but we do need to take into account, and you may recall from past budget cycles, that overall burden where we started about $10 an hour and now $15 an hour, our operations, that put a new burden of a total of $300,000 a year as we continue to progress through that minimum wage. So we have that in year two. Summer Street Fest. So year one, we budgeted for our typical Summer Street Fest. Year two, we've enhanced the events to bring a similar atmosphere to what we did for the 60th anniversary, with some family fun zones, slides, teen zones, gaming zones, and also to continue doing that downtown fireworks show that we did for the 60th on the final night of Street Fest. So it not being on the 4th of July, it gives us the ability to get a huge cost savings on that. And I think it looks really good and did really well downtown. You'll see on here restored special interest programs. So that's that year one, you saw the decrease of all of our karate classes, those types of classes. This is restoring those. They're back in motion. These are fully covered by revenue. So you'll see that increase there in the expense, but it's fully covered by revenue. Standard increase for dial-a-ride and fixed route, increase of equipment replacement charges. Again, these are all standard things that were in there, other than we have the annual upgrade for Christmas tree lights as well in there. So that's all I had for the Parks and Recreation budget. And I will mention there's several grant projects and CIP projects that you'll see highlighted when Public Works get to the CIP projects. And I'd be happy to chime in if you need me to on those as well when we get to that point.
This chart shows city's outstanding debt. There are 5 different issues. They total $19.6 million, and they'll be reduced to $17.9 million next fiscal year, and then to $16.3 million the year after. The first one is BPFC lease financing we use to make various energy efficiency improvements. And the other one is HUD Section 108 loan. We use these funds for HUD CDBG eligible projects as well as economic development programs. And third is BFA Municipal Water System, COPS. And we use the funds to acquire municipal water system and make some improvements. And fourth item is BFA MTV Enterprise Note Payable. We executed this note to acquire a portion of the property to be developed as the butterfly garden. And then the last one is BFA Transportation, COPS. And we use the funds to construct the regional transit center and parking structure. In terms of sources of these debt repayments, BPFC lease financing, the service is made with energy cost savings. Section 108 loan repayments are made with HUD CDBG entitlements we receive annually. And BFA municipal water system COPS are paid for with water revenues. And BFA MTB enterprise note payable is we pay mostly with billboard and pump station ground leases. And last item, BFA transportation COPS are repaid with Proposition A and Proposition C funds primarily. We make fund transfers for various purposes. From the general fund, we'll be transferring $231,000 per year for BPFC lease financing debt service payments and $500,000 a year to fund capital projects, $240,000 a year to fund economic development fund, $173,000 first year and $176,000 a year to building and safety to reimburse the fund, and about $12,000 a year to parking district fund to balance that fund. And we discussed about $2.28 million a year in transfer to public projects fund earlier. And last item out of the general fund is CDBG fund transfer of $8,600 in the first year and $56,000 in the second year to balance that fund. Fund 100 and 135 transportation Prop A fund and Prop C funds would transfer $926,000 in the first year and $824,000 in the second year to make the debt service payments on the regional transit center and parking structure. State gas tax fund transfers approximately $1.3 million annually to the general fund to reimburse the general fund for qualified street improvement and maintenance costs. And municipal water system transfers next year $479,000, and the year after that $412,000 to make debt service payments. And there's small $750 transfer out of Fund 602, Certified Access Specialist Fund, to reimburse the general fund for administrative costs. And next department is Public Works.
Good afternoon. This is Bernie, so I'm pitch hitting for Len Goretti. So to go ahead and start, we have the salaries, wages, and benefits that are increasing, and that is shown there. We also have a proposed increase to add a mow and blow contract service for parks, street medians, and roadway setbacks for $375,000. The mow blow idea is to eliminate the time that our crews are spending weekly mowing flagship parks and small unsupervised parks. Additionally, it will eliminate the time our street crews are spending mowing medians and miscellaneous sites. The thought is that we can utilize existing personnel to better dial in and pay closer attention to specific needs in parks in our downtown area, for example. And for the street crews to continue with the monitoring of homeless sites and large item pickup throughout the city. Our crews have spent a tremendous amount of time on homeless related issues these past few years, which has taken away from the time required to maintain the street sites. Our parks in the downtown area need more time spent in terms of detailed work that our crews currently can't spend because they are mowing satellite parks. We have also brought on several new facilities, and these include the New Hope Shelter, the Regional Transit Center and Parking Structure, the main event center, and the soon-to-be completed Carruthers Park Stormwater Capture Facility. These new facilities are going to require staff to spend more time at these locations, so a contractor providing mow and blow will free up additional time for our crews. So that is the justification for that request. Also shown here are increases to building and ground maintenance. And again, that's for new facilities and aging facilities that need more care. The new transit facilities maintenance for the regional transit center and parking structure. And also a proposal to install radar feedback signs at the tune of about $40,000. Also shown here is the maintenance and operation of the Carruthers Park stormwater capture system. That is going to be funded by Measure W for the next 5 years. And each year we're anticipating about $163,000 needed to maintain that facility. We also have our equipment purchases and replacements. For year one, we are proposing to replace 2 CNG trucks for the Public Works Department, to purchase 1 hybrid truck for public safety, and to purchase 3 utility vehicles for Public Works. Those are Taylor-Dunn electric carts. We're also looking to replace a dump truck, a truck-mounted aero board, a wood chipper, and a scissor lift. So the overall increase versus last year is about $107,000. And I'll go ahead and talk about the next year. For the next year, we also have salaries, wages, and benefits. And we are not proposing to do the radar feedback signs for year 2, so that is shown as a deduction. In regard to equipment purchase and replacement, again, for year 2, we're looking to replace 2 CNG trucks for Public Works, to procure a hybrid passenger vehicle for Parks and Recreation, and that will replace the Park Patrol truck, another hybrid truck for Public Safety, and a pressure washer for Public Works to continue maintaining our bus stops and bus shelters. We're also looking to replace a paint striper and also a Kubota tractor. And that is essentially the major changes for Public Works.
Municipal water system.
For the municipal water system, the proposed revenues and expenditures are pretty much balanced out, and those are reflected here by this chart. In regard to the capital projects funds, we are proposing for the first year, as shown by these funding sources, about $12.5 million, and for year 2, about $8.3 million. And now I'll go ahead and talk about each individual project, and as PJ stated, he may jump in when we discuss some of our park projects. So for contract services, there's just a carryover of $50,000, and this will provide for an update to the sewer master plan. For the slurry contract, this will provide for slurry seal of various streets throughout the city, and we do this based on a cycle. So for the first year, 21-22, we're proposing a little over $1 million, and for year 2, just under $400,000. Bridge maintenance provides for the funds to repair and rehabilitate bridges that serve as public roadways in the city. So we have a carryover of $40,000 from the current year. So the first year, we're proposing $50,000 and $10,000 for year 2. In regard to street striping, this would restripe arterials that are outside of our striping schedule as necessary. And using gas tax, we are proposing $60,000 for each of the next 2 fiscal years. Structural improvements provide for catch basin inserts to meet NPDES or stormwater requirements. This would be funded by our new Measure W funding. We're requesting $200,000, and this would cover county-owned catch basins. We have already completed all the city-owned catch basins. For stormwater management projects, this would provide for the design and construction of miscellaneous projects to increase stormwater and urban runoff capture and reduce stormwater and urban runoff pollution. Again, this is the new Measure W funds. For the first year, we're proposing $300,000, and for the second year, $400,000. Next account is fencing of vacant lots and rights-of-ways. This has been a pilot project in which we go ahead and install white picket fencing or Kentucky fencing on vacant lots and SE rights-of-ways for neighborhood aesthetics and beautification. We're proposing a carryover of $64,500 for year one and nothing for year two. The next item would be the Veterans Memorial Enhancements, and this would provide for cleaning and polishing of the artwork at the memorial. We're requesting $2,500 for each of the next 2 fiscal years. Next item is street improvements, and this provides for general improvements for various streets throughout the city. Year one, using this combination of funding sources, we're proposing about $4.5 million, and for year two, about $2.3 million. And this will cover various projects, including the resurfacing of Bellflower Boulevard, resurfacing of Clark Avenue, also the Bellflower Complete Streets projects, and the Alondra resurfacing from Bellflower to Hayter to name a few. Next item is the pavement management system. We're required to update our PMS or pavement management system once every 3 years in order to keep qualifying for funding. This is a requirement from Metro. So we are proposing an allocation of $38,000 in Prop C for year one and 0 for year two. Next account is the Sidewalks Projects. This provides for pedestrian and or bicycle projects citywide, including ADA compliance. We're requesting about $1.19 million for each of the next 2 fiscal years. So in regard to sidewalks, for capital on-call concrete and sidewalks, our department's priority at this time is to address the area around Baxter Elementary School, around Cerritos, Baywood, Bayou, and potentially down near Somerset. We will also be applying for an HSIP grant during the next call for projects, and we will try to get funding for this project as well. However, if that doesn't come to fruition, then we will have to spend our on-call funding in order to do work in this area. We will have funding to continue to address streets that have partial sidewalks, such as on Cedar and Rose Street, between Lakewood Boulevard and Downey Avenue. We will also have to look at some additional design work for some spots in that area as well. We will also be funding we will also continue to fund missing sidewalks near the recent Stevens project area that was recently approved. And the streets that we are looking at in that area would be Ives all the way down to south towards Vandalia. So again, this is just an explanation on some of our sidewalks activity. For the curbs, gutters, sidewalk improvements account, this provides for the removal and replacement of damaged concrete and the installation of missing curb and gutter. For each of the next 2 fiscal years, we're proposing $230,000 in Measure R funds. Next account is the traffic signal improvements, and this provides for various traffic signal improvements citywide. Year one, we have $1.3 million, and for year two, we have a little over $300,000. And again, this would include traffic signal improvements that we will be undertaking on Lakewood Boulevard. The next account is Sims Park. This would provide for the recreation office remodel and ADA service window updates, as well as the security updates to the offices in that area. So between those 2 projects and the miscellaneous $10,000 allocation, we're requesting a total of $100,000 in general fund for year one and $10,000 for year two. Next project is Lakewood Boulevard ADA Improvements, and this provides for the construction of miscellaneous ADA improvements throughout Lakewood Boulevard. For year one, we're requesting an allocation of $200,000. Next account is the Aquatic Center improvements. This would provide for the replaster of the outdoor pool, for the weight room re-roof, and also miscellaneous expenditure of $10,000 in the facility. I do want to note that the various improvements that consisted of the replacement of the indoor pool pump and the replacement of the indoor pool filter media for $30,000 has already been completed this fiscal year. So we would request that that be stricken from the final budget. So the request for year one would be $250,000, and the request for year two, which would include the painting of the interior of an auditorium and miscellaneous improvements, would be $60,000. For the Constitution Park improvements, this would provide for various improvements, including lighting and park amenities, as well as a security camera system. So for year one, we're requesting $203,000. And PJ, I don't know if you want to chime in on this one.
Yes, thank you, Bernie. This is just the ongoing improvements we have there. We again have some federal funds that we're in competition to get, and if we get those federal funds at $300,000+, it would enable us to make even further improvements and better amenities at the park and more amenities. So we're in line. Hopefully we're able to get that, but even without that, we've secured enough funding through the state that will not go on the general fund, that will allow us to keep progress moving on that park to add amenities to it. And the security system prior to adding the amenities is already in motion, and that will add to the security portion of the improvements at that park. So that's a separate vendor we're using, and those will be used through Measure A funds for the camera system.
Thank you, PJ. The next account is Thompson Park improvements. So for year one, we're proposing various improvements, including a leak repair and resurfacing of the basketball courts for $45,000, along with miscellaneous improvements of $10,000. So for year one, we're requesting $55,000. For year two, we're proposing a new playground installation of new playground equipment for $175,000, along with a miscellaneous allocation of $10,000. So for year two, the request would be for $185,000. For Carruthers Park, for year one, we were just proposed miscellaneous improvements for $10,000. And for year two, we would propose the re-roof of the Carpenter House, the installation of security fencing for the skate park, along with various improvements, including the replacement of electrical panels. So the total for year two would be $160,000. Next item here is the soccer field artificial turf improvements at Sims Park. And this would again provide for the construction of the artificial turf soccer field at Sims. And there is also an application applying for additional grant funding in order to bring this project to fruition. So we are not requesting any allocation for year one, but we would be requesting $2.5 million for year two. And again, PJ, if you want to add anything to this one.
Yes, with this being in here, we're moving forward with the soccer field, the multi-purpose sports field, no matter what, if this stays in the budget as is. What I would recommend is if we do get the grant that pays for that $2 million, I would recommend we keep this and reallocate it towards the Teen Center, Senior Center project to give us some leverage there if we get that. But again, without the grant funding, if this stays in, we would plan to move forward with the construction of that multi-purpose synthetic turf field.
Thank you, PJ. Next item is City Hall improvements. For year one, we're proposing the purchase of new furniture for $7,500 and miscellaneous improvements for $10,000. So the total request for year one would be $17,500. For year two, we're proposing various improvements, including the replacement of the front glass doors and painting of the auditorium walls in the Bristol Auditorium, along with a miscellaneous allocation of $10,000. So for year two, we will be requesting $40,000. Next account is the city maintenance yard improvements. For year one, we're proposing the construction of offices for staff at Public Works. And that's a little over $1.5 million, along with miscellaneous improvements of $10,000. So for year one, it's $1.54 million that we would be requesting. And for year two, just a miscellaneous allocation of $10,000. For the West Branch Bellflower Station design, we're proposing a carryover amount of $28,000 in Measure R, and this would provide for the development of guidelines and designs for the Bellflower Station for the future light rail project. The next item is equipment purchases, and this is for our PEG fund. It provides for various equipment purchases related to programming and broadcasting of city events and activities on designated cable channels. So for year one, we're proposing an allocation of $200,000. and this would provide for the refurbishing of some of the equipment in the city council chambers, as well as the green room and possibly the auditorium, and also an upgrade to the sound system at the main event center, which also serves public forums. For year 2, we would just be requesting an allocation of $50,000 to continue replacement of PEG equipment. The next item is the Senior/Youth Center, and this would provide for the final plans, specifications, and construction documents, and also for potential property acquisition. Measure A, we would request an allocation of $600,000 for year 1 and $350,000 for year 2. Again, PJ, if you want to add anything on this one.
Yes, at the moment, we can strike potential property acquisition off of this one. And as Bernie mentioned, this would be for the construction documents, getting those 100% done and moving forward on that project.
Thank you, PJ. Next item is the Palm Street Park improvements. This would provide funding for playground rubberized resurfacing. So we would be replacing that rubberized surface at Palm Park in that playground, and the request would be $100,000 in general funds for year 1. We're requesting $0 for year 2. The next item is the Belmont Theater improvements, and this would just provide for miscellaneous improvements for the Belmont Theater property. So we're requesting a carryover amount of $10,000 for year 1 and a new allocation of $10,000 for year 2. And the last item is electric vehicle charging stations. This again is a carryover amount of $65,000, and this will provide for 2 electric vehicle charging stations currently planned for Sims Park. That concludes the capital projects overview. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
This is the end of the staff's presentation. So if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you, Tay. And thank you, everybody.
All right, I think I'm unmuted now. Any questions of staff or of Jeff? Anybody want to chime in?
We tried to keep it easy, but not that easy.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Mayor, we can hear you.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll take a first stab at it. I have a couple questions for our Public Safety Director, Mr. Joe Hockman. Let's get to here.
I got my pen ready.
First off, I just got to say, getting this packet on Thursday and doing the best to read through this whole thing, I mean, and just kind of reading through some of the accomplishments of all of the directors and all the staff. That was kind of neat to see that itemized in line and just to be able to be like, oh, that's right, you know, that's happened. So that goes for everyone. I just want to start off with those positive comments and across the board. Now moving on to my specific questions related to public safety. I like the increase in obviously the SAOs and then the requesting, Joel. I do have a couple questions. The first one is regarding the increase, your statement under page 180 in your goals that states increase the enforcement index to 18, which is a plus 10% from 2020. Can you explain to me the index and how does that how is that measured?
Sure. A number of years ago, I don't know how many, several, the state of California kind of established what they considered a benchmark, a good solid standard of enforcement, which would be a department doing its best to modify the bad driving behavior of its residents so as to reduce the consequences, injury, accidents. And so if you take the number of hazardous citations issued, which are ones that are subject to causing accidents, not an example is, speeding and bad turns and all kinds of stuff. So you take that total of citations plus the DUI arrests, and then you divide that total by the number of injury collisions and fatal collisions. And California says that should be a ratio of about 20 to 1. So you're writing 20 more tickets than you are having, accidents, that kind of thing. And in the past, when we had two motors, we had a very aggressive program. We were in the 30s, and we were killing it. Now, in more recent years, we've slipped down, and we're oftentimes not even meeting that 20 level. And I just think with the overtime, and we're targeting it to when problems are occurring and where they're occurring, and using people that are hard workers, we can drive that number back up. And I would expect us to go past 18, but I just picked 20% increase to be a reasonable goal.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And obviously, public safety is going to be one of our number one priorities, especially with passing the Measure M. What would we need to do in your budget to ensure you get to that 20 index?
Well, I tell you, with the overtime there, we could certainly say, let's just go with that and see if we can make it happen. And if for some reason we're finding we're not getting enough of what we're looking for, perhaps it could be readdressed in 6 months or something else. That's just one idea. There are technologies related to finding stolen cars, license plate reading devices that are on fixed positions and so on, but that wouldn't really affect the traffic index. That would affect maybe the stolen car rate. But so for just traffic, this is our best effort right now, I think, just to put more guys on the street to write tickets. And what I put in there is a little bit ambitious as far as in other words, that's a good chunk of overtime. So I would think we could give it a shot.
So it sounds like you want to take a shot at this, at getting to that 20 with the current budget proposed. Okay, that we can always, I guess we can revisit that in 6 months.
Joel, Victor, sorry for interrupting. Let me rethink this. So what we're saying is we take the number of accidents, we write tickets to the effect of being the accidents and citations and DUIs or anything equals 20% of the total tickets issued. So what we're really talking about is issuing tickets, correct? Moving violations and that sort of thing, DUIs and that sort of thing.
Correct.
Is the base number of accidents and or traffic incidents actually going up, or is the number of tickets that we're writing going down? I guess is my question.
Yeah, and you're right in asking it. Both occur different times and so on, but during COVID, our accidents went down, as you can imagine, but our tickets went down as well. So the way that we've driven up this thing in the past is writing more tickets. And because we don't have, I don't think in this well-established town, engineering flaws in the traffic flow and all of that, there's not much to do with it except write more tickets and slow people down. So, if we don't have bad weather and these other kinds of factors, really writing more tickets makes the rate go up.
So I guess my question is, is it really a good goal to write more tickets for the sake of writing them? Or is there an actual correlation between the number of tickets issued and the actual number of traffic incidents that occur? I don't want to get locked into a formula if there's not a real correlation between the two. And that's what I'm wondering about this.
Yeah, the state says there is a correlation, and by virtue of developing this index, and it shows the constituents, it shows the public that we're doing our best by being aggressive, by being assertive, and being out there, being visible, And when you get a ticket, it does modify your behavior, you know. And if you see a cop, it does modify your behavior. So they believe there's a correlation, and that's why a 20-to-1 is a good goal for showing ourselves responsible in traffic management.
No, I understand that, but we do have a baseline number of traffic incidents and something we can point to if we don't necessarily meet the total number of tickets issued. What I don't want to get locked into is hiring additional overtime or officers or whatever we do in order to meet a state standard that may not have any realistic impact. I guess I'd want to make sure that we've looked at the data of the baseline number of traffic incidents that occurred. And like you said, and you brought it up, the COVID issue is had driven down the number of traffic incidents dramatically because there's less cars on the road. So if we throw that out, do we have a baseline number of incidents that we can look at and compare going forward? I guess is my question.
Well, certainly we've got data for years and years, and we could pull something up. But before we depart, I would also point out that, you know, you have somebody on the street doing traffic enforcement, and then so the gangsters rolling in from west of the 710 may not be as inclined to come to town if they see there's a chance they're going to get pulled over. There's other benefits as well.
What I don't want to do is increase the number of ticky-tack tickets, having gotten one myself last year for rolling through a non-existent stop sign, but that's okay. You know, I'll eat it. But I'm just saying.
Jeff, my question on that, I think my question is, how do we reduce some of the main complaints, right? And with regards to speeding and traffic violations, is it going to be this approach of writing more tickets? Is it going to be kind of creating that attitude that if you're, you know, doing things like this in Bellflower, you're going to more than likely get a ticket? That's what I want to know.
I understand completely, but again, data answers those questions. And what I want to make sure is that we have good baseline data. So when you're answering those questions, we're not just looking at some kind of ephemeral formula, that we actually have a good database of the number of incidents that occur on these streets. So when the residents do ask you, you could say, well, actually, the number of incidents here has held steady or increased or decreased or whatever we want to going forward. That's the only reason I brought that up. Because otherwise, it's a formula that nobody's going to understand. You know?
Right. Well taken. The other reality is that traffic is probably number one or number two most complaints, you know, for a lot of communities, not just ours. And so it's just always nice to be able to say, yes, ma'am or sir, we're going to put that motor deputy out at 4 o'clock on an afternoon, or we're going to have some overtime available to be there when you're seeing this problem happen. And they're usually satisfied with that response, as well as a radar trailer deployment or something. It's just nice to have that tool.
Right. But that's two different elements. That's addressing the immediate need and solving the concern, as opposed to the actual data-based approach. That's my thought. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
My next question, Joel, relates to your reporting districts from a crime rate reporting, which is District 37, 34, and 35 seem to be the highest three districts when you report. I don't see anything really in the goals to try to reduce those three reporting districts. And I don't have a map in front of me, so I don't know exactly the areas that they represent, but is there anything that you can suggest to us or bring to our attention that we should be considering to help address those high double-digit numbers of 15, 19, and 26%?
Well, the districts you're referring to are, and I'll have to do some digging to look back at, you know, years and years, even decades ago, to see. My belief is it's been somewhat of a pattern over time, based largely on the, you know, maybe some of the housing, you know, like the deep lots and that create trouble, you know, for officers that are patrolling, they can't see as well. Maybe the numbers of people in certain districts, by virtue of having a larger population, they are more likely to have more trouble. You know, housing density in 1337, for instance, eucalyptus, you know, there are some historical issues that are there for sure. As far as trying to spearhead a geographic area, we tend to be more about trends and problems, like stolen cars, you know, where are they coming from? And a lot of the graphing we'll do, it just shows it's a shotgun blast. There's stolen cars all over. There's not a real clear pattern. So getting at a specific district would be putting personnel on the street and trying to just focus geographically versus thematically, and most of the time we're just dealing with topics rather than, the real specific areas. So if a pattern is something we can affect, for instance, some of the crime that's reported in those districts, might be domestic violence. And so we can't do as much for domestic violence as we can getting cars broken into. So I'd have to, if you wanted to push or get more detail on that, I'd have to get a little better printout of these specific crimes in those districts relative to others. And maybe we'll find that can be explained in ways that are, not quite law enforcement related in some cases.
Thank you, Joe, for that.
It would take some more it would take some more research, in other words.
Absolutely. And I kind of figured, so I'm just posing the question now, and I'm wondering if that's something that should be done in-house or if it should be a consultant or, again, I'm just spitballing a little bit here.
Yeah.
This is what I get.
I'll be happy to get with the crime analyst and see if we can come up with something to produce a chart or something that'll be informative. The top 10 crimes in the area, something that we'll figure something out, and I'll bring it forward in a weekly report or something soon. Okay.
The budget item that you have for the mobile digital computers and the license plate readers, do you believe those are effective, and are those mobile? Oh, it's mobile, so those are on your actual deputy vehicles and stuff like that. What about those permanent ones? Like I know Lakewood Mall has some. Do you believe those are effective at all? Do they help kind of knowing who's coming into the community, and kind of does it help address who's coming in and creating activity, maybe stolen vehicles?
Sure.
And things of that nature?
I've heard from a number of people that the ones at Lakewood on the main thoroughfares do make a big difference. There's the two main advantages of those systems. One is you might catch somebody in the moment rolling in a stolen car. The second is that all of the cars going through are being read and fed into a massive database. So when a car is known to be in Bellflower, somebody researching from another city says, I'm looking for a guy, and here's a license plate. Boom, they find out that plate has been read on, Oak Street in Bellflower 7 times. Then they go find him and they take him away from our town. So it's got good use front and back end. But yeah, I've had a number of requests over the years. Hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And it would be helpful as far as changing our stolen car volume and arrests and all that. It would make some difference. I just can't say I'm confident in a 30% reduction. I can't make a number to it, but they're useful, and they're out there 24/7 doing that. One of the advantages of the mobile system, the guys will drive into certain areas, in some cases mobile or motel parking lots, and they'll find stolen cars in the motel, and that's how a lot of the arrests come from, is going to places where they're known to frequent. So either mobile or fixed do have their place.
Thank you, Joel. I think it'd be interesting to kind of get more of a strategy approach as to how we're going to work on reducing some of the activities. But that concludes my questions for you at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Victor. Anyone else have any questions? Let's stay with Joel at this point. If Sonny or Ray have any questions having to do with public safety.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just quickly, Joel, just I think a couple of things that I kind of spotted, or I've mentioned before in past, is Siaka still the best deal?
That's a good question, and we looked at it a couple years ago again with Long Beach and the county, and there just wasn't another option. Now, every couple of years we recheck to see if there's another provider out there, but at this point they are.
All right.
I personally would like to see some more competition in that field, but it's not coming.
Yeah, I think it's still kind of split up. I know that I think removing dead animals, I think there's companies out there that can do that separately, but then the rest of it, they don't. So, okay, well, no, we'll definitely keep watch on that. And speaking of watch, is getting to community outreach and and maybe this is more of a statement than a question for you, but I definitely strongly encourage the Neighborhood Watch program, and I've been trying to recruit captains, and I know it's been tough. And there may be a need to, I don't know, if some kind of boost somehow to bring in interested people. I wish people would just be interested just purely on, again, knowing your neighbors, keeping keeping the community safe and so on. So, but it's still, I know it's hard, and trying to fill the public safety review committee has been a challenge. So, I'll be still looking to staff to help push on that.
Sure.
I think from a public safety standpoint, I think that was it. But again, overall, to the rest of the staff and Jeff and so on, again, this is again, you guys have done a great job on this budget here, and it, as what I heard, there's tends to be some status quo, and we're still waiting for our ARP money. So and I believe Tay is smiling, but it's I think we're in a good position. So I know there's still always work when we need to detail some things and know where our priorities are and so on. But yeah, there's always, I mean, each of us have a wish list, and of course it's going to take money, and but we understand that there are priorities, and so there's the willingness and understanding of give and take, and so we'll make the best situation for Bellflower. So with that, okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Amata. Mr. San Ynez, have any questions regarding public safety?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Well, before I do that, if I can make just kind of a general comment. I called Tate today and asked a couple of questions. I think he's going to provide us with additional information. And he asked me the question, how was my weekend? And I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to share with you that my response to him was, it was great, because I spent my entire weekend reading the budget book. And he said, why did you spend your time? Because I said I had fun reading it. The reason I am saying this is because I'm really impressed. I'm continuing to be impressed by staff and by the city council with regards to what we have accomplished the last 2 years. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank staff, our city manager, and especially our city manager and directors for steering the city over the last 2 years. You know that our lives have been upended by COVID, but in spite of that, we accomplished a lot together. And again, I want to say thank you, all the staff, for what you have done for the city. And looking back at, I think this is now my fifth or fourth or fifth budget cycle, and I continue to be impressed with especially with the discipline that we have taken over the last few years in coming up with a budget. And I can assure you that we are the envy of the neighboring cities, because in spite of the financial challenges, I think our city is doing so well. And that's because of the discipline that we have promulgated within the city in terms of our spending. So having said that, I'd like to ask a couple of questions you want to focus on Joel. Joel, on chart 21, you mentioned about the license plate readers. So how many vehicles are equipped with the license plate readers?
We have 4.
4. Is there any other vehicle that will benefit from a license plate reader? Or are we doing the optimum already?
I think we're doing pretty well for a size city that we are. I think 4 is a good number. I'll ask around and see, but I'm going to guess that and two, there are certain people that like the cars with the readers and they'll get that car. Other people, you know, are less driven by that kind of thing. So I think 4 gives the workers the vehicle they need to do the job. I'll ask around just to see if there's something lacking, but I have a feeling we're in good spot.
Yeah, if you can just confirm that, because I want to make sure that we give you the optimum resources to make sure that we are very effective in terms of these license plate readers. And the second question is, so the 1.5% increase for LASD, that's confirmed already, correct?
Yes.
For this coming year. And then for next
And
year, you're assuming it's going to be another 5% increase.
Yeah, next year we don't know what they're going to do. I'm just putting a number that's higher than I hope it turns out to be. But historically, we're in the 3.5 range, 3.5% or so. So this was a real shock. Now, the rate increase, recall, is a recovery basis. So that is recovering last year's actual costs. So somehow they spent only enough to warrant that 1.45% for us to increase next year, which again is moderately shocking.
Okay, so but based on past experience, the 5% for the year 2 is kind of reasonable.
Yeah, partly because we had such a low one this year, I'm just afraid to undersell it. So I'm hoping for 3.5 next year, but I put 5.
Well, I guess, you know, I'd rather be conservative.
You know.
Okay, and then I'm just kind of curious about this part-time wages of $234,000.
Part-time CSOs.
Are all our CSOs part-time or some are full-time?
No, we have 4 full-time, and we have, you know, usually around a half a dozen or so part-time. Some of them have very few hours, others have the 28 that's allowed. So, and that changes throughout the year, goes up and down.
So how many full-time CSOs do we have?
We have 4 full-time CSOs.
Okay, and then part-time?
Currently, I think 7.
7,
I believe. A couple of them only work a little bit on the weekend. They have other jobs, but they've been with us a number of years. And they wanted to just keep with us and get out in the field every so often. We are going to be recruiting one more person, another part-timer, because, like I say, some of them get full-time jobs and their hours go way down. So our budget is based on hours, not on bodies. So we can pull in another part-time body and get them some more hours and still stay at or below budget.
Yeah, Joel, I was just going to ask that. What's the total number of hours we're getting now with SAOs? You read that. You read my mind when you said that.
Yeah, well, each one's different, but
I know.
28 is the max. So.
Do you have well, you don't need it right now, but I mean, it would be good to produce a weekly hour output, because we're going to want to see when we add the bodies, the SAOs, we're going to want to see the productivity output of that and the number of hours that we get each week, as opposed to the number of bodies that are just floating in and out. So that would probably be a good comparison to start with now, when if you're creating the data.
Let's see, you're talking SAOs or CSOs?
Both.
Okay.
Both, yeah.
Yeah, so our CSO hours are in the weekly every week.
Right.
And then, yeah.
But we don't have again, it's not a comparison basis. I think we want to see both to see what the productivity levels are going forward. I agree. I agree with the notion we should add 2 more for this budget, but I want to make sure there's a return on that too. So the number of tickets issued, right. I know you've been putting it there, but we haven't really tracked it, so,
Yeah, and what I'm proposing is the 2 new people that come on will be the first calls, the first contacts for homeless related issues.
Right. But it ties.
We'll make.
But it also ties. I mean, it's when you said that, it reminded me of the issues we have the SAOs too, because I'm not 100% certain where their hours are going either. So I think we'll want to see both going forward. So the residents going to want to know these answers too, especially as we go forward.
And Joel, my follow-up question on the CSO is, if you can give us, let's say, how many, based on the part-time, how many full-time equivalents are those part-time employees?
Right.
You can going to be.
No, you don't have to.
That'll be around 3.
You can give us the answer later on.
Yeah, I mean, we could extrapolate those numbers from the actual numbers each week that are.
Yeah, based on the hours.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, if you
Yep,
can give it
that's
to us
easy.
later on, that will be fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure. Okay. Yep, no problem.
all right, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor, for Joel.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sunny Sanez. Joel, I've got a couple questions for you. You had
Okay.
proposed 2 additional SAOs, and that's fine, but if we're looking historically, didn't we always have 2 motors in the streets and we're down to 1?
Yeah, we've had 2 for more years than we haven't. But yeah, we've been down to 1. We lost Mike Hawk, as you know,
Right.
a few years ago. So that was the budget issue, as well as then he did ultimately pass away, which was a sad day for sure.
But do you think we get more bang for the buck for a motor than another SAO?
Well, it's apples and oranges. I think, again, the overtime for traffic, I think, will work pretty well. And if there was another unit added, I would recommend a no-call car. It's cheaper and a lot more flexibility as far as who gets to be in it. And they can still produce and be visible like a motor can. So, obviously that would be great, but as a slightly less expensive option, I was just proposing overtime, which would be filled by people who want to work and show themselves busy.
How often are quads being used?
Recently, not as often. They were out last week, or maybe it was the week before, cruising the usual spots, but we haven't been out on them in the last couple of months, I would say, like we did earlier. But because the CSOs and public safety staff are out cruising the areas, the trails and the rivers and so forth, we're keeping an eye out as well. We're there almost every day. We're in those places checking for homeless issues.
But doesn't the quad give us more versatility on finding, accessing areas that the cars can't go?
Yeah, there are cases of that. We're walking the areas and driving and parking and walking and checking behind holes in different places. So we're trying to be visible, but yeah, it's getting to be better weather too. There's no reason why the quads can't be back to a weekly route.
The quads are almost 10 years old now. Are they still in good repair?
Yeah, we've had some trouble along the way, and of course, if it goes to the county for repair, it seems to be a bigger deal than it ought to be. But at this point, they're still rolling good.
Okay, and because we donated them to the county, only they can work on them?
Yeah, I'll just say that's the rule.
Okay. I thought maybe we spent our own money, had it done locally, we'd be way ahead.
Yeah, that's the rule.
Yeah, way back when we used to have Sky Night, and then we got away from that, went to Aero Bureau. Do you have anything in the budget for when we do call upon Aero Bureau to help us?
Yes, and that's worked great. I'll just tell you, in my opinion, for this community, a helicopter just flying around without cause on patrol is way too expensive. But when you need them and you got one, they fly out of Long Beach. That's been great financial savings, and we haven't lost a minute on our coverage that way. So if we call them over for something like, can you check a roof for me or whatever, because there might be somebody there, then we wind up paying, for the few minutes or seconds even that they're here. But there's a number of crimes that if they occur, man with a gun and so on, they come anyway, and we don't pay for that. It's part of the county overhead. So, for $35,000 a year or something, we're getting great helicopter support. So that was a good decision.
No, it's kind of under the radar. We don't hear much about their service to our community. And we certainly, I don't think, and people still remember the whoop, whoop, whoop of the noise of the Sky Night, which was no longer with us.
Yeah, but make no mistake, when the helicopter shows up and does the circles, we get a call.
Right, I get it, but it's not every day and every night like it once was.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you get funding? You used to get funding occasionally, or maybe more than occasionally, for DUI checkpoints. Is that still available to us?
What happened, though, a couple of years ago, the Office of Traffic Safety with the state stopped giving it to contract cities directly and gave it to the sheriff's department to use on our behalf. And we were still doing DUI checkpoints under that arrangement and still are. It's just that COVID wise, it was one of those things that, you know, kind of went away temporarily. But the grants, whenever I speak of a grant in the weekly related to more traffic enforcement or a crosswalk sting or DUI checkpoint, all of those things, those operations, distracted driver was the most recent one a couple weeks ago or so. Those are all from the OTS, California Office of Traffic Safety. And that's the same money we've used all along, even back in the old days.
Do you need to request that when the COVID situation has been put back in the bottle, then do we have to get back with them to establish a schedule for that activity?
Yeah, and that's, at this point, we were a little bit saturated with them, you know, about a year and a half or 2 years ago. So taking a little time away wasn't a bad thing, I don't think, because part of what happens is we impact the business community when we're out there and, you know, getting in the way and so on. So having a little time off, I think, was healthy. But when things open up more fully, we'll be in line for the same kind of thing we've done before. And one of our motor deputy collaterals is to kind of keep an eye on that and manage those things. And so he's all over it.
One of the questions I've asked, and I don't know, I suppose we've had enough time to examine, has our calls for service gone down after we opened our homeless shelter?
Oh, that's a question that'll be hard to answer. I'll tell you what I can know is the complaints have gone down to this office because we're out every day on a more proactive basis looking for issues, not waiting for a call. As far as, you know, homeless people either being a problem or something, those calls would go to Lakewood Station and they wouldn't always be identifiable in a search query because it's just maybe a disturbing party and you show up and it's a homeless person. Well, you don't know that in the call, and we couldn't find out by researching the call. So it would be a little tricky to try to get to a really good number. A lot of that data might just be anecdotal. Because I talk to a number of deputies and say, are you having as much problem now as you had a year ago? That kind of thing. That would be informative, but not highly technical.
Oh, I get it. But, you know, when we made the decision to that was one of the selling points, is that we would possibly have less calls for service if we're able to deal with the homeless more effectively. But I know the jury's still out on that. Last question. You know, it was brought up by Mr. Amata earlier how effective we've always been with the neighborhood watch captains and how there's so much reluctance to host those meetings. Would it be possible that we'd give some sort of enumeration to those that would host to be a captain? Could we give them a couple $100 a meeting, or is that illegal and wrong?
Well, it hasn't come up before. I mean, there may be.
Nobody wants to volunteer, but would you have people in the house and say, hey, you're gonna get a couple $100 for having people here 3 hours, and wouldn't you like to do it?
Well, we do have a small fund for district representatives to use in their district. And if that is to buy supplies such as food or something, that would be a reasonable cost, I'm sure. Sometimes they do meet in other places, whether it's churches or they used to meet in the parks when those rooms were open and so on. Another incentive might be, I know the Ring doorbell systems are very popular, and there's been a couple or a few cities that have bought some of those, or gone in half with if somebody like a neighbor wants to sign up for Neighborhood Watch and they want to get a Ring, the city would pay, you know, $25 toward their $50 or something along that line to help them install that, knowing it helps the community be safer as well as gives them an incentive to join Neighborhood Watch. So, I mean, there can be some of those more creative incentives, I would imagine.
No, I would think, I'd like to have that looked at a little more seriously, since we do have, you know, a little funding this year to do these things, but that has always been an effective measure of trying to reduce crime in the local neighborhoods. And I know the virus has kind of put it on the back burner, but when we revive that, I would like to think that we could give it a little more exuberance to it so that people would want to do it, and it's just not a forgotten entity. But that's just a comment, not a question. Anyway, that's all I have for questions, and I think all the councilmen have weighed in on public safety, unless you have developed any other questions from what was asked. Is everyone okay to move off public safety at this time?
Mr. Mayor, actually, I have one more question. I apologize. Just one
Okay, go right ahead.
Hey, Joel, earlier in the year, we met with the captain regarding the Volunteers on Patrol program. Do you have anything in the budget? And maybe I missed it. Do you have anything on that to promote that program, to bring that program kind of back to life a little bit? I know the goal was to partner with all the other cities. Is that still moving forward?
Right. We don't have anything in the budget yet because we don't have a because the VOPS program is a little bit on hiatus as well. We don't have anything tangible money-wise to put in the budget as far as ideas. We talked about maybe buying the uniforms of people from Bellflower that want to join the program because we're trying to spend on Bellflower people, and the program isn't a Bellflower program, it's a station program, so that was a little tricky. We did do a promotion for the program just, on the free public media kinds of stuff, and we have gotten the patrol logs prioritized for them with some of the locations you'd mentioned and others that's been sent out, and we get updates and logs from the patrol officers there as to where they went and when and checked on these different things. So we know that they're looking and following the guidelines of the patrol plan. But as far as spending money on them to help the program become stronger or more attractive, we don't have anything set aside for that presently.
Joel, can you do me a favor? Then can you add to your to-do list to circle back on that specific item, as well as the automatic plate readers that the Lakewood uses, how productive those have been for their public policing efforts over in Lakewood? That'd be great. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just a quick one. Sorry. Joel, again, you've mentioned, public safety receives grants. What grant money has been used to cover bicycle riders' safety and enforcement? And also, just to tag that in, also to tag in with sort of related is, can crossing guards be under grant money?
First question, we don't have any money dedicated to bicycle safety and haven't for several years. We did get a grant many years ago to do bicycle rodeos and so on and so on. So right now, there's nothing designated for that purpose. The grants that we have, the two larger ones, are going to partially pay for deputies, because not only do we get a discount for a growth item, as I talked about earlier, the grant rate is the same discount, 31%. If you pay for, in this case, most of a deputy or some of a deputy with a grant, then you get a much cheaper cost. And that grant rate stays with them as long as the grant still pays it years and years. So that's our best leverage for saving the most money. In answer to your second question, what was it?
In regards
What
to
was your
crossing
second
guards. Crossing
there you
guard,
go.
is there any?
Yeah.
Is there any
I mean,
grant
it's a
money
general
for
fund.
that, or it's all general fund?
Yeah, it's a general fund item, and typically, at least in the public safety realm, that whatever's being offered for grants so often is something we don't really want to do anyway. It's unfortunately, I wish they would give more money for meat and potatoes, but I don't know of anything like that. We could take a peek and see if there's anybody else that has money coming from a source like that.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
For them specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Amata. So let's open up the questions again. Victor, you've read this thing, and so has Sunny. So if you have another area, another department that you'd like to kick off on, then we'll follow your lead. Victor or Sunny? Got any? Can you hear me?
Mayor.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I just want to, I want to start first with the slide presentation. I have some kind of general questions, if I may, so I don't forget this.
You have a slide presentation?
Okay, no, the slide presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, cannabis tax rates.
That's one of our
Guess
bright spots,
That must be Tay, right?
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah, give it to Tay.
Yeah, Tay,
Yes, sounds good. Yes.
Okay, Tay, you were kind of alluding about the 8%. So you use 8% in the next 2 years budget for
Correct.
dispensary and retail?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, and that's kind of reasonable in terms of the budget. But on the non-nursery cultivation, how many permittees do we have
We have
for
two.
non-nursery cultivation?
We have two. Joint Forces and BBNY.
Okay. And how about nursery cultivation?
Nothing right now. Zero.
Nothing right now. Okay, so we have two. All right, that's good. And then for testing, how many permittees do we have for testing?
Zero.
Zero. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, and then on the available general fund on chart number 18.
Yes.
No, excuse me, number 16. Number 16.
Yes.
In the bottom, in the note number 2, the last phrase is a deposit for property acquisition. Is that the Arkansas parking lot extension?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let me clarify that. Okay. And then on the municipal water system, I guess I'm just kind of praying because one of the things you mentioned about the use of the ARP money is for water, sewer.
Yes, and broadband.
I guess it's something that I'd like to kind of consider if there's anything that needs to be repaired prior to the sale. Is it something that we can use the money for?
well, Tay, on that, and that brought to mind something I was thinking as well. As far as the bailout funds that we're getting on that, can we reimburse our expenses from the sale of the water system that we've encumbered on the sale into those funds at all, or is that going to be verboten?
I'm not sure how to answer that just yet.
Out of the
We have to wait
proposed-
for Treasury guidance about the
Right.
exact rules.
Yeah, because out of the proposed sale of the system, we've got what you said, you're going to reimburse over the next 3 years at 2.6 million a year, whatever that number was, or I forgot the number, but if we could reimburse that out of those funds, that would make it a heck of a lot easier on the budget and make your life easier.
Right.
Just the projects that we undertook, there were a few years back. So ARP funding will not apply to those projects.
No, I understand that. It won't apply to those projects, but my question is, would it apply to the backfill of funding that was taken out of the water system?
Backfill the funding taken out of the water system. If anything that happens prior to, say, last year, nothing would qualify. We had to
Because it's-
wait for
it's
the
pre-
Treasury
it's pre-COVID.
guideline as to when the expenditure had to occur.
That's not exactly what I'm saying. Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. So the expenditure would have had to occur during the COVID period, is what you're saying.
Right. We don't know exact time.
So do we have any funds that we've allocated out of the sale of that system during the COVID year?
Not anything that's related to capital,
Okay.
because they're looking at capital investments into water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure.
Okay. So I guess my question is then, if the water system is going to need some repair over the next year, if we are not successful in selling it, then we can use those funds to do so, correct?
Yes.
Then is it absolutely necessary that we reimburse the water fund if we use those funds to backfill the repairs, is what I'm saying.
I think that would definitely qualify if we were to undertake the project now to get backfilled through the ARP funding later. but we should have 50% of the ARP funding in this month anyway, very soon.
Agreed.
And then we should have Treasury guidance by mid-May, so in couple weeks. So we should have fairly good understanding as to how to spend it.
You know, Tay, I'll talk to you privately about where I'm going with this, but I think there's a way to offset at least some of the general fund payback to that fund if we were to use this for future repairs. We'll talk later. We can adjust the budget later on. I don't need to beat you over the head with it now, but I think there may be a way.
Or we can hold up in any repairs just in case.
Well,
I'm
this
gonna
is
get the
exactly what we've been doing. I know.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we fully utilize the ARP,
Well,
since
my point is,
they're allowing us to use it for sewer and water.
agreed. So the water system is breaking even as far as the day-to-day operation of the system right now. What's not breaking even is the tentatively repairs that were going to be need to be made in the future. If we can use these funds to do that, then do we necessarily need to have a solvent water fund? Which is the reason Tay wants to restore the money back into that system.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the equation I want to ask, and I just haven't asked it correctly yet. I'll think of a better way to ask it later.
Yeah. Okay.
Jeff, couldn't we, maybe, we've got some abandoned wells that we need to cap. That's something we could do right away, or you would be reluctant to do that because that would impact the price of the sale of the water system.
It could, but we're going to know in the next 3 or 4 months what happens to the water system, I think.
But
It's all
there is
coming ahead.
some maintenance, not necessarily pipelines, but we've got some, we got to still work on that office over there on Lakewood Boulevard. There's a well that needs to be dealt with there and some other places.
Oh, no, we absolutely have some outstanding work to do. And, I'd like to, selling the system would obviously get rid of that work, I'm hoping. But I think that we'll know because everything's coming to a deadline. The existing survey is going on, the existing condition survey is going on. It all has to be done and completed into the PUC by the end of June. And even at their slow rated speed, I got to believe we're going to be in there by August, September, sorting this thing out. So I think we're not going to be dealing with this time next year. I'm almost certain of it. So we will answer that question quickly. And then we're going to figure out what to do with the excess. If we don't sell it, then we're going to have to get creative on that. And I think that's where I'm headed now, thinking about that.
Well, we know it needs help, but we just don't know. Yeah. All right, Sonny, you still have the floor.
Yes, on the capital projects, Jeff, City Hall improvements, have we fixed the door going to the back of City Hall?
Yeah, to the parking lot, the parking structure?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's now self-locking, right?
It is self-locking. We double check it to make sure it stays that way, but it is self-locking.
Okay, good, thank you. And then on the Belmont Theater improvements, $10,000. I thought we sold Belmont Theater already.
That's
The Belmont Theater is leased to the comedy club. And there are some, for the lease, we have to take care of some of the maintenance issues such as the roof. So, and that's why we have money budgeted in the budget for that.
So we legally, we still own it.
Correct.
Okay, all right, very good.
And Jim is making his presentation from Dodger Stadium in case you're wondering why there's an echo.
Now batting.
Okay, Mayor, that's all I have for the slide presentations.
Thank you, Sonny.
Do you
Jim,
want
what
to
did
answer
you
any
say?
specific department or?
Well, one other question I wanted to follow up while I'm thinking on the Belmont property, Jim, did you say roof or what did you say?
Yeah, like I did say roof. I'm sorry, you can't
We spent
understand.
a fortune on that damn roof. We shouldn't spend any more money on it.
No, but in the lease, as the leaseholder, we're responsible for it. So I believe it's responsible to have some money in the budget for.
No, I get it, but I think the roof's probably not one of those items. Otherwise, something's wrong because I know we got a new roof on that place a couple of years ago. All right, Sonny, so you've completed your questions having to do with the operating budget with Tay. Mr. Sanchez, do you have any questions of Tay as far as the budget goes?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. No, actually, I don't have necessarily a budget question for Mr. Tay specifically. I kind of wanted to follow suit with kind Councilmember Santinas as going down the presentation. I do have some questions along the lines there, if I may do the same.
Yeah, go right ahead. Go for it.
I guess this first question is for Tay. On slide number 19, Tay, can you kind of explain to me what the comprehensive user fee update means, that line item?
Right, the city
Your 40,000?
city departments charge various fees to recover costs. So we have hundreds of different types of fees, and we need to go through the expertise of Wildan or other consultants to justify and calculate those fees.
Give an example, Tay, of what we do. Building fees, that sort of thing, you know.
Right, building fees, the plan checking fees, the planning fees, public works right-of-way permit fees, council appeal fees, all sorts of types.
Okay, thank you.
Victor, these are time and material studies. We go through them and we have to show an independent party to go through them. So we know that they're accurate. We can charge them without being challenged somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I
Mr.
didn't-
Mayor, if I may add, that was an offshoot of the revenue subcommittee project we had sometime last year.
Mhm.
So does this include like business licenses and business permits, or apartment door tax? No,
Taxes are not included. No.
Yeah.
that's a separate item.
These are fees, cost recoveries rather than taxes.
Okay. Thank you, Tate. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. My next question is for planning under the nuisance abatement, including without limitation vacant lots. That $40,000 that's budgeted, is this staff time? Is this what's the reason I ask is that I think there's a lot of vacant lots, and I just want to make sure that you have adequate resources to continue your abatement processes.
Councilmember Sanchez, the 40,000 is just the overall increase from the last budget cycle. I think we have well over 100,000 in the nuisance abatement budget. So the 40,000 was just the increase from the last cycle.
And what does this cover exactly?
It covers the contractor's time, because we do have a contractor that's going to do the landscaping and fencing work. So it covers that contract. It also covers, well, that's the majority of it, yes. And then what we do recuperate the cost through a special assessment. And when we do that, we do include staff time, city attorney time, and the contract for the contractor.
Perfect.
Because it is recoverable, we won't hesitate to spend what's necessary to do the work on those things.
So this number could always go up if needed.
Correct.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I had a gut feeling on that just from some other experiences. Let's see. The other question I had on the presentation was related to public works, the cost of mow and blow, contract services for parks. From the sounds of it, Mr. Bernie, this doesn't affect our employees, right? We're not losing any employees or anything like that. Just from what I looked, this is an added service so that you guys can focus on other priorities, correct?
Yes, let me intervene there. So that's one where over the last couple of years, the Public Works Department we've burdened them with additional duties, namely homelessness. And every time that these SAOs and the others go to homelessness, the Public Works Department responds as well. They pick stuff up off the street. And quite frankly, the Public Works Department has become a large part of the nuisance abatement in the community. What we've noticed over the years, because we've tasked those guys to do that, the maintenance on it's been harder and harder to keep up the maintenance on the mow and blow on the streets and medians and other parks and medians and other public facilities. So rather than add a body with the increasing cost, the deal that I struck with Mr. Gorecki was he's been bugging me for years to contract this out. We're allowing Len to contract that out to free up his employees to do the other things they've been doing over the last couple of years.
I think it's a great plan.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I did have a question regarding the radar feedback signs. Are these going to be the ones that actually flash at you if you're going over whatever the speed whatever the speed is on that neighborhood or whatever it is?
Yeah, Councilmember Sanchez, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Len?
Okay, I'm doing well in my car, so bear with me here. So yeah, the radar feedback signs are, yes, they're set at the mileage, they're the mile per hour limit on this whatever street they're applied to. And when they detect vehicles going faster or coming close to that speed, they will start flashing the speed that they're going. So yes, that's what they are.
Okay, but they're just flashing the speed. They're not actually flashing a light, right? And they're solar, are they solar
No.
panels too?
Len, the
Yeah.
one he's talking about is like on Lakewood on Clark Avenue heading southbound. If you exceed the speed limit, there is actually a flashing light and the speed limit itself flashes along with the light to show you. It's pretty hard to miss. If you're speeding, it tells you pretty clearly what you're speeding.
Yeah, and those are that's just a component to it. Yeah, I mean, we can make sure that we include the flashing lights with those.
Right. How
Yeah.
about live ammo? Can you shoot at the cars after they pass, or is that no?
Yeah, ideally we can talk about that outside of a public meeting. Yeah. Yeah, but to answer your question, they are solar powered. That's what I budgeted for, because a lot of the locations, especially if you're looking at doing on neighborhood streets, we don't have power right there, and so it's just easier to budget these as solar. If we figure out a location where we actually have access to a hardwire power, that's the easier option. The solar ones they become problematic, but they're the only option where we don't have power. So it'll depend on the location. The solar powers are a little more expensive, and that's why we got price quotes for those, just to give a worst case scenario for those units.
Okay. The other thing I was going to ask you, how many radars does this actually include?
I believe this was for, I believe 6 of them. And typically where you put one in each direction on a street. So say we're going to put it on Clark somewhere, then we would actually put 2 units on Clark. So really it's 3 locations, but it would be 6 units total.
I think I like the idea of a pilot program to see if it actually improves our speeding issues and all that. So, okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Len. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Appreciate that information. Thank you, sir. Let's see. Actually, Len, one more for you. Slurry contract on page 35. Does this within the next 2 years, are you including the Artesian Downey parking lot that we own, or hopefully we get rid of that, but in the meantime, just in case, is that included in your budget for the next 2 years?
Typically that's not a lot that we have slurried. And when this came up a couple months ago, when we looked at that agreement, which we probably have to dive into a little more, it actually states that not the cities, but the property owner and the property management companies are responsible for the maintenance of the parking lot. So we probably have to do a deep dive on that a little more, because ultimately, just based on a short read of that agreement a couple months ago, they're on the hook for it as opposed to the city. And if that's the case, we can certainly make that demand and see where it goes from there.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. I wasn't aware of that.
I wasn't either.
All right, that's, I think. All right, perfect. No, that's it for me on the presentation side. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to make these comments.
Before I call on Mr. Hamada, so am I hearing you right? The city has ownership of a parking lot at Artesian Downey where the McDonald's is?
Yes, there was an arrangement whereby when that area was developed, the city owned the parking lot. We turned the parking lot over to the developer to develop that property. We still have the ownership rights of that lot, but they have all the maintenance obligations of the lot.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Sounds like the Dodger Stadium deal, doesn't it? With the
It's a
parking
weird
lot?
deal. It's
Yeah.
the strangest deal I've ever seen. Yeah.
All right. Could explain why we have the fireworks stand there. But anyway,
Exactly why. Yeah.
let's go forward. Mr. Hamada, have you any questions, comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow on some of the others, Len, since you're hopefully still on, again, please drive safely. The question about the speed, monitors, I've been to conferences, and some of these vendors are trying to push some of the, the added features, and obviously I wouldn't go as far as live ammo, but some have been trying to push cameras on them, and I just think about the situations with all the cities that put speed cameras and all that, and just the legal aspects of that. So we've never had cameras on any of ours.
Are you talking for enforcement purposes?
Yeah, something, whatever it takes to say, put someone on the spot, say you sped in this neighborhood, and you could be subject to a ticket. But I think that's probably the issue, is the cameras sometimes never a guarantee, I don't think.
Carl, what's the status on the speed cameras in the state? We're not doing them now, right? Is that the deal?
There are some significant privacy concerns with regard to that.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Lan also.
They've got 'em in Arizona.
Oh, okay. The state we avoid. Lan, in your budget, and should something come about as it pertains to the traffic calming measures that we have discussed, and put a manual together?
Yes, sir.
Where would that come from if we go through that? Is that under CIP? Is it somewhere under your budget where there's a pool of funds to deal with a project here or there,
It would really depend on what the measure is, right?
Sure,
So
sure.
we all know a traffic signal, which
Oh, of
is
course, yeah.
a potential measure is a $500,000 project.
Yeah. And pain is that.
Those are relatively few $1,000s. So if something came out of it on the lower end of things, I think at least for this current budget cycle, we could most likely take care of that with our maintenance and operation funds that we have. And then when we get to mid-year, we can just adjust that line item for us if we need to.
All right. Let's see. One more question, Len. Is the maintenance yard adequate in size for you?
For what we're doing right now, it's adequate in terms of its footprint. I mean, we have we're able to store our equipment, and we have the parking that we need there. If what's not adequate is the administrative offices over there. So that's and that's why we have the capital budget in there. So that's
all right. Yeah.
That's in there for an honest to God good reason.
I've been there many times.
Len, we want to make those offices a little bit worse, so forget that.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Len.
Yep.
Just quickly over to Tay. There was some discussion about again user fees, and Tay, what's your typical timeline when you do a study to look at those and make any necessary changes? And you said Wildan does that.
Right. Last consultant was Wildan. It involves all the city departments.
Yeah.
Wildan doing all the calculation, time motion study, conducting interviews with the department directors, managers, so forth. So
when was the last comprehensive study?
2017.
17. Oh, okay.
17. So it's 2016, 17. It takes like 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. So it's still a little wait. You feel it's good. It's
It's necessary.
getting, yeah, it will be necessary event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
State
So,
law says we have to remain current on those, so we can't.
all right. So that's, yeah. All right. So
Something
we're
I
going
don't
to, all
wanna
right.
do it, but
Yeah, of course. All right. So it's on the table somewhere. All right. Okay. Thank you, Tate, for that. Going to the cannabis fees, there was the one on the cannabis transportation, the $1,500 per year. Are those the delivery guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason that came about when the discussion was, the council was originally discussing those.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to do those. I mean, how do you enforce those? I mean,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
can't identify the cars going in and out of town limits. So we just assigned a arbitrary fee of $1,500 to, as far as having the permit to do that. And people that want to have that permit, they take it, obviously. And I don't know how many we currently have.
All right. That was my next question. But
Yeah, I'd have to double check
okay.
to see how many we currently have, but I don't know that it even bears any relationship actually to the actual number that do it in town. I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, just here's a little thing. Last week I got a door hanger from one of the apparent popular, delivery companies. So just
Not the one you usually use.
No,
Ray?
is that one? Okay, well, I'll take the fifth. I don't know. I just happened to get one. It was a huge door hanger, probably 4 or 5 times the size of a typical one, and it offered a discount, and it was one of those names, I believe. So, I can check with staff to see if they.
Yeah,
if they,
I will look at give me the name of the company and I'll double check. And
Yeah.
frankly, since they hung a door hanger out, that's enough reason for us to send them a notice.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which we've done before. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good. Next one was in regards to TOT. I know that ours currently is 9%. Tay, do we have an enforcement problem with motels on getting our due TOT? And I know that there was talk. We had that subcommittee, and TOT was one of the potential issues for change down the road. And we know that we're hopefully in the next few years we'll be getting some hotels in. So obviously I can see that's a sort of wait and see. But Tay, do you feel are we getting our fair share? That's the bottom line question.
At the time, our recommendation was to increase it.
Yes.
We thought 9% is relatively
low. Yes, it is.
Right. So maybe we can make another attempt in the future.
Well, it isn't so much that, Tay. Are we actually collecting
Yeah, that's
the current that we should be collecting out of those places?
Right. Payments are coming in from all the motels. If you're asking about compliance in terms of paying the right amount, we haven't done an audit. That's the only way to tell whether it's
okay. All right. There'll probably be some further discussion down the road with that. Next question, couple questions, Jeff. The budget calls for 283 full-time employees, and that number, and I know that's been lower than some years here, and but for now, do you feel that employee ratio, per capita is covers what we can do? Yeah, basically that's
For the moment, we're meeting our need. We always keep an eye on that. When I got here, 9 years ago, we were at 91 full-time employees. We reduced it down to 82 and hung tight with 82 until this year. And PJ beat me up and made me give him an employee, so I did.
no. Well,
Hopefully,
and that's a good one. I think for grant writing, grants.
It's right. It's right. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's something we're going to have to keep an eye on, and there may be a need to expand those level of services as we go further and the organization gets bigger. But as you guys know, tend to want to run a little bit leaner than most people might. So if we need to add bodies, we will, but it won't be until we need to.
Yeah. All right. The last question for you, Jeff. I know we have facilities, or we have streets that are within our town, and we have maybe the tendency to provide the somewhat potential service to our neighbors, be it to the south, west, north. Has there been any expanded discussion with some of those other cities to agree to either some kind of fair share? Like one example, I think is some of the street lights on Lakewood are technically in Bellflower, but they basically help light up the abutting city.
Oh, I see.
See that's one.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Len on that. I know we share costs on a number of traffic signals in town where there's shared borders.
Yeah,
we share the
County,
cost in Long Beach and installing one.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
As far as I think you're talking about highway safety lights and some of the lights there, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe
Yeah,
Len can answer that one better. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a question down the road I can approach. All right. With that, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mata. Remember, this is for Len as he drives down the highway. When you were able to obtain money for us taking possession of the Lakewood Boulevard thoroughfare,
Yes.
has that money still earmarked for the use on Lakewood Boulevard, or have we reallocated that money?
There's still some there. I'll let Tay talk about that in detail. He's the magician with the money and the funding sources.
Okay. There are some projects you want to do on Lakewood Boulevard as we try to improve it up to the levels of the rest of our city streets. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're currently we're hung up over on a location, but we currently have a project that is we're trying the final design on, and that's for the addition of two brand new traffic signals on Lakewood Boulevard, and then modification of two existing signals out there. It's a grant that we got through Metro. It was a sub-regional Measure M grant that we applied for and got, and it's in design. We're just kind of held up on that corner property over there on Somerset and Lakewood Boulevard.
Well, that's what we discussed at closed session. Is that the one?
Correct. Yeah, and once that one's ironed out, then we're probably wrapping design up very soon thereafter, and then we'll put it out to bid. We're going to bid that the same time. We have a COG project that came through the COG a couple years back, and that was for some modifications over at the Lakewood and Alondra intersection. And so we will bid those two projects out at the same time. Short of that, obviously, moving down the road in the future, we're part of the Lakewood Corridor Group, also through the COG, and they've come up with a design, kind of like a model for the Lakewood Boulevard corridor from Downey all the way down to the south end of Lakewood Boulevard, with different design options as it relates to the streets. What we can do if we want to look at adding medians in and parking, and then obviously any kind of a grant nowadays has to include pedestrian and bicycle safety, which includes, probably adding some bike lanes in on Lakewood Boulevard, which wouldn't be a bad deal. But there's for lack of a better term, a boilerplate design to kind of do some of that. And that's kind of on the shelf with us right now. And as we move forward and we see any big grants that come through, it's a lot of roadway. It's a big ticket item. So any kind of grants that are in the ballpark a few $1,000,000 is what it's going to take for us to do blocks of Lakewood Boulevard. So it's certainly down the road and something that we want to do. We're trying to address some of the immediate needs right now, like I said, which is the traffic signal project, the Lakewood Alondra, and then shoring up some of the outstanding ADA issues that are along there with sidewalk and curb ramps.
Have you seen Lakewood Boulevard at Imperial and to the north where Downey has actually made the light standards match that new mall down there? Would that be the basis for what we would have to do?
Oh, no, that's not the basis that we have to follow. It's more along the lines of doing medium work, but medians that fit our needs and our design. If we're going to look at Downey a decade ago, they went bonkers with street lights, poles through there, and I wouldn't recommend doing something to that extent. But certainly, really, what we need to do, to be honest with you, is we got to bump the sidewalks out into the existing street, probably by about 5 feet, because that's the cheaper way to do the sidewalk issues there. We have the space to do that. It's just, like I said, a huge undertaking because it's too costly to underground all those utilities, and it would be too costly to try to buy private property to extend the sidewalk a couple feet back behind where it is existing. So really the ultimate option for us would be to build the sidewalk out into the existing street, thereby narrowing Lakewood Boulevard by a few feet. But again, that's a design that we would sit down with the council at some point and say, hey, this is the future for Lakewood Boulevard. This is how I envision it. This is how we think it's going to work from a traffic management perspective, and make it so it's eligible for some of these larger grants that come around once in a blue moon.
Yeah, and that's for wheelchair access on the boulevard.
Okay.
Because the utility poles are in the middle of the sidewalk there. So we'd have to
correct.
utilities. Yeah.
So this question, I'm looking for the page and can't find it, but I'm sure Bernie can find it. There's a page in there that shows our water sales and how they will track for the next several years. Can you find that page?
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask Len because he'll lose control of his car. I don't think he's got it.
I don't have the PowerPoint.
No, I think it's not. So we're going to go with our local agent here.
Are you talking about slide 33, municipal water system budget?
That could be. It showed columns whereby it showed the income that we are projecting to receive.
Yes.
Okay, I think he's looking at page
Slide,
3. Yeah, 30.
Yeah, 33.
slide 33. Yes.
Yeah, there's slides. Okay.
All right. Well, here's what I was wondering whether or not we had taken into account. We were doing a deal with Bellflower Somerset because they had shut off a couple wells for rehabilitation, and we were going to be able to sell them increased water for a couple of years. Is that chart take that into accommodation?
The revenue should, when Tay and I went through the budget, they were looking at projecting what the additional revenue was going to be as a result of those sales. Steve Letton had a projection of what they were going to use or what they were expecting to use through our well for the remainder of this year, and the revenue is kind of based off of that.
Okay, so we've included that in our projections here.
Yes.
Although it's not a forever thing. When they get the wells going again, it may not.
No, once the Leahy well comes on site for them, I don't know the extent of how much water they're going to be taking from us at that point.
When do they project that will be finished? It seems like it's taking a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. They're still probably, I would say, at least a year out before they have it built.
Okay. Well, yeah. All right. Sonny, let's come back to you. Any more questions developed as we have the discussion today?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. just follow-up questions for Len.
Yep.
On the mow and blow, I really like the idea, but I just want to get the handle on this one. So how many full-time equivalents are you expecting to do this job?
That's a good question. So typically, when our guys go out and mow, there's going to be 4 of them that operate. You have guys that are trimming and edging and all that. I think when you utilize a private contractor to do that work, they actually come in with a much larger crew. That's how they come through, and they get it done so quickly, and they'll get whereas we can mow one park and maybe one satellite park a day, possibly 2 satellite parks a day, depending on which one. They'll come in and do all of our parks one day with the crew that they bring in, and they will probably do all of our medians and our setback areas on another day. So what takes several different rotating crews right now in public works existing, they'll probably an entire week to do. They'll get through it in a matter of probably 2 days, 3 days at the most with the crew that gets assigned to the contract.
Yeah, I think the way to blend, are you looking at 4 guys at 20, 80 hours a year freed up because of this? I think is a better way to answer that. Or what's your number of man hours?
Oh no, I'm looking at, oh goodness, I'm looking at almost all my full-time guys, with the exception of the paint crew in the streets division will be freed up. I mean, I'm freeing up, I would say probably close to in between 12 and 16 guys per week.
How many hours? How many man hours roughly? I think Sonny's trying to do the equation for the bang for the buck on that.
Well, that's why.
Yeah.
What I'm getting that, Len, is I'm just trying to find out how many people are we buying, for this service. That's why I want to use the full-time equivalent.
Well, I think Len is saying you're buying a sliding number. It could be 10 one day, 15 the next, 8 we don't know.
No, I understand. So I want to use the term full-time equivalent. So at least we know.
So you're asking
apples to apples.
So I think what you're asking is, how many men are we freeing up, or how many hours are we freeing up as a result of this contract? Is that what you're asking, really?
Yes.
Or, okay. Yeah.
That's and I don't have that right now, and so, but we can certainly take a look at it. I can go back and calculate what we're doing, what we know the schedules are, and how many crews are doing on what days, and easily calculate that number. Then once we put the RFP out and we see it, it'll be very easy to kind of compare and contrast what we're getting versus what we were spending. That'll be very easy for us to do.
That will be helpful.
Do you think will there be any transition time on that as your guys show them what to do, basically, or is that going to be pretty slick, you think?
No, I think they'll come in and start the week they're starting. There's always bugs when you're starting with a new contractor. You got to work them through it. You got to do some stuff, but I'm not expecting this to be a huge transition. They'll come in with all their own equipment. They're not going to have equipment breakdowns where a mower's out for a couple days and they can't get the sites, which is what we face sometimes. I think the transition will be fairly seamless. It was the last time I did this in the other city that I worked with. But it's just a matter of making sure the contractor's doing it to your specifications, and that's kind of where you got to babysit them a little bit initially. Once you get them in a routine, it works fine.
So okay, in addition to that, so I want to confirm that the mow and blow will just be for passive parks, center medians, and then setbacks.
No, the mow and blow would be for all of our parks.
All the parks.
All the parks, and my hope right now is to try to get as much, definitely the medians, and try to get some of the setbacks included too. Until I see pricing, it's going to be difficult to figure out. The priority right now for me would be a mow and blow of all the parks to free my guys up so they can actually start taking care of issues in the parks. You know, sometimes you have a plumbing issue, they just can't get to it because today's the mow day, so they got to delay that for a day.
Yeah.
Really, my priority right off the bat is to handle all of our parks and our satellite parks and get that underway, and then from there pick up all the medians if I can, and then the next, probably the third least thing I'm concerned about are the setbacks, because we obviously could still handle some of that if we had to. It'll just depend on the pricing.
So how about the equipment that are being used right now for mowing and blowing? I know we have this big riding mower that we purchased several years ago.
Yeah.
Will that be sold to the contractor, or what do we do with it?
That's an option. When I did this last time, we took a discount in year one for all the equipment that we gave them. But we could certainly do that. We also have the option of auctioning it out, and there's a couple different things we can do with it. I would like to try to get a discount. It just helps with the pricing and everything the first year.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then another question, did you budget any money for the parking lot extension of the Walnut into Arkansas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Yeah, so we're doing a little what they call lipstick on a pig right now. We're kind of prettying it up. We're gonna slurry it here, then we're gonna stripe it out, and that's throwing a few $1,000s at it to get it where we need it to be right now. And then we're going to we've budgeted to extend the same exact type of parking lot that we did on the Walnut side all the way through to the Arkansas side.
So what's the time difference between the temporary fix versus the permanent fix? How much time is going to be? It's going to take.
Soon, when the slurry contractors, we had a pre-construction meeting with him. I believe it was not last week, the week before. He's going to be coming in here fairly quickly. So I think the Arkansas lot will be slurried and striped probably by the end of May. And then we'll probably turn around and put a bid out sometime in July, or June or July, and hopefully have that contractor ready to go August, September to do that work in that parking lot. And it shouldn't take them very long, probably 30 working days to do that one.
Okay, so I guess well, we'll talk on the side on this, because I was kind of concerned about doing a temporary fix and then taking it away.
I can answer that. I can answer it easily for you. So our public condemnation attorney has recommended that we put the temporary fix on it now, so we start actually utilizing it as a public parking lot before they settle the final price on that. He thinks it would work to our advantage to do so. Otherwise, I would have, I'd prefer to save the money and just do the permanent fix at the time we could do it. But Alan felt that it would be best to go ahead and get it open temporarily before that we did that.
Okay,
So that
all
was,
right, well, it's gonna help our legal case, that's fine.
Yeah, and the temporary fixes that we're doing out there is probably going to be less than $10,000. Yeah. It's not a huge investment for us to get it. We've already done some work out there, and we'll do the striping in-house. It'll just be the slurry on the parking lot. I don't expect it to be anywhere even close to $10,000. So
yeah, I mean, the reason for that, Sonny, is even though we have possession of the property, we have not settled on the final price of that yet. So we're hoping this works to our advantage. We show the public use for it.
All right, thank you. And then Len, on the traffic signal improvements, so you budgeted money for Bellflower and Harvard, Lakewood on Somerset, Maine, and then Rose. Is there anything else in the pipeline? That's not in the budget?
No, there's no, not in the budget. So Bellflower Harvard is budgeted already. It's under construction right now. I think if anything that you saw in there was probably just carryover, that should be wrapped up here hopefully in the next month or two. The signals on Lakewood are budgeted. We have a grant for it. It's just a matter of getting that project rolling. From there, we have a call coming up here, I think it's sometime in August, where there's going to be another call for projects for HSIP grant. And we definitely have a couple locations that we're going to be putting in for that. And short of that, I mean, if there's traffic signals that the city council or intersection city council wants me to look at, I'm more than happy to explore those. Those always start off with the traffic study. And that's typically runs probably about $20,000-$25,000 for us to do a traffic study. But yeah, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. All right. Very good. That's all I have for Mr. Garaki, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Sonny. Lynn, I hope the signal at Harvard and Bellflower Boulevard will match those on the rest of the boulevard per Mr. Dutton's request.
Yes, they're decorative poles.
All right, thank you very much. I don't want to go to LG's and listen to that discussion again.
No, it usually only takes me getting my butt kicked once during my lesson. So,
all right, Mr. Amata, you have questions and comments?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm gonna let Len get home.
Well, yeah.
Wherever he's headed. He's still driving. He's been driving quite a bit.
Well,
no, I've been in the parking lot for 2 hours. I'm not driving to talk to you guys at the same time.
You got to give him a raise. He's living in his car now. All right, Mr. Victor Sanchez, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm okay at this point in time. I just have to kind of sleep on a couple of things and then bring it back to the next session.
So it's 4:30 and, you know, we're planning, sometimes we wrap this all up in one meeting, but I think we've developed some pretty good questions. And with having some new members on the council, I like for them to be able to vent anything they have on their mind. And so if you think it'd be okay, why don't we adjourn this meeting and we'll resume this on Thursday, I mean.
Mayor, do we still have a few minutes?
All right, if you got some more questions, but I thought
just a few more questions.
Everything from you.
For Ms. Corpus, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm one of your favorite persons about code enforcement in terms of carts, illegal vendors. So do we have enough coverage, especially on the weekends? Because I think there's been a pattern of developed that these vendors, I think they know that there's not much code enforcement activity on weekends. And especially during the summer months, I'm just concerned that they're gonna proliferate in the city. And I like street vendors, but the main thing here is they need to be licensed. So I just want to make sure that we have enough capacity to enforce our ordinances and the state laws that they comply. So my question to you is, will there be enough coverage on the weekends for code enforcement to make sure that our ordinances are enforced?
Councilmember Santinez, I will say that we do have weekend coverage, but it's not every day during the weekend. So we have coverage one day out of the Saturday and Sunday, and it rotates. So related to vendors, because I do know that most of them, like you said, pop up during the summer, we do have a budget for overtime. So we could work with the code enforcement staff to schedule some overtime on those specific days to do sweeps. I do know that when they are in during the weekends, they keep in mind vendors and yard sales, which have tended to be the last, or not the last, which have tended to be the top violations during the weekend.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about yard sales because they're very easy to spot. I look at the postings on the website, who have been permitted, and then I just go around. But the vendors, I mean, you just have to ride around the city, and especially in main thoroughfares, they keep popping up. So whatever you can do to enforce that our ordinances, I think it's going to be helpful, because to me, it's unfair to our brick and mortar businesses who are having permits, paying their taxes and all these things. And with the other vendors, they're not doing their fair share.
Understood. I will add, and this is just to note that when the state changed the laws, they made it where we couldn't confiscate the goods from the vendors. So I will say that oftentimes when we go out and cite them, if they leave, they do come back because they know that we're not going to take their products because we can't. So I will say that's kind of, I wouldn't say a loophole, but that's been pretty tough to enforce because they've really taken away some of our ability to crack down on these.
Well, I think we and I had a conversation on this. We know that it's a loophole, but what I'm looking for is some data so that we can present that to our legislators in terms of how many tickets have been issued and how many actually have been enforced or via payment and so on and so forth. So we know we can present them with some data and hopefully they can do an amendment on this legislation. But we need some data to present it to them. Okay, so I'm just leave it up to you. I want to make sure that we have enough coverage for that, especially during the summer months.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then, Mr. Mayor, if I can call on Mr. De La Longa for one quick question.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, Mr. De La Longa.
I'm here. How's my echo?
You know, because we know that you're in Dodger Stadium. You know, if you remember, Councilmember Sanchez and Hamad and myself were part of the meeting we had on artisanal manufacturing. So do you have anything in the budget to help support artisanal manufacturing?
Nothing specific. We have a lot of those things are basic staff duties that we can do with staff. So we didn't add anything major to the budget regarding that. And our budget items, our accounts are general enough to where if something comes up, we can use our budget for those items if a cost was to arise.
Yeah, but Sonny, right now the task to us is to amend our downtown specific plan and other locations where we want to see that kind of development. And that's before we could do anything else, that's where we have to start. So.
And Jeff, the plan of attack to get to these things, the implementation plan, Beth and I are working on that and we'll hopefully have that in late May or June.
Right. Yeah, I knew that. I know it's just going to take a little while. And frankly, it's all new. In fact, you know, Carl and I had that discussion how we're going to do this. And, you know, we may have to look at form-based, you know, planning or something else in order to implement this, something we haven't done before. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least we have some kind of flexibility just in case something may come up in the next 2 years.
Oh, no, we're definitely on this and we're definitely going to try to make something happen. But right now, it's the crummy scut work we got to do before we start doing the fun stuff. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And then PJ, one question on the community youth center, senior center. So you asked that the $600,000 for the purchase be struck out of the capital projects. So how much money do we have in the general fund, if any, for the construction or design of the community center?
Let me clarify that. The only thing I wanted struck was the language.
Oh, the language, not $600,000.
Tay, please go back in and fix that. So yes, all of the funding should remain in there, and that's Measure A funding. No funding should be stricken out, so I apologize for any miscommunication there.
Well, that's what I'm clarifying. I want to make sure that I heard correctly because you're freeing up $600,000.
Remember, Scotty, this is the man that said it's going to cost us $800 a square foot to build. So you better have that budget there.
So in addition to that, how much money do we have for this specific project?
So as of today, we have about $1.3 million in Measure A funds. In the budget, 500 of that, 500,000 of that would go towards the soccer or the multi-use sports field. And then approximately 800,000, 900,000 goes towards the plans and getting us to the next steps for the senior center project.
So we have enough for bathrooms, Sonny. We're good.
Yes. So there's no funding of the construction of that project, but there's also a new allocation coming in of another 400,000, and that'll keep building up. But and then we just got a notification for the competitive grants for Measure A just came out. So the first round of those have come out. So we will definitely be looking at that and hoping we can get some funding towards the project from those competitive grants.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
And then finally, Tay, on the, is Tay still on board?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. On page 5 of the budget book, there is a line item says pending budget adjustments of $1.6 million.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell us what it is?
Right. The revenues are coming in stronger, so we'd like to make the budget adjustments later.
Also, there's revenues. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's good. They're always good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have for now.
All right, thank you. You know, you developed a couple questions. You must have seen what I seen on Sunday where you saw 5 different street vendors up and down Alondra Boulevard. Is that right, Sonny?
Every weekend. Every weekend.
I didn't realize that we only did Saturday or Sunday, but not both. I think we need to look at that. We both.
Well, that's why I asked the question.
You know, yeah. So I think enough said there.
Well, wait a minute, Beth. We can build money into the overtime to cover that if you want to. You want to do that?
They're playing us, you know.
Yeah.
And those cars,
Yeah,
they wouldn't qualify anyway. They all don't. They need hot water and all kinds of accoutrements to qualify.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, we've lost sort of the mojo to enforce it because we can't do much to them. But we certainly could go out there and enforce that. It wouldn't cost all that much money to put those guys out there for several weekends in a row to let them know we're serious. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a good idea.
No, I put them in the same categories when we got 5 guys living in a patio out in front of the Hawaiian room in Alondra. They live there all week, you know.
You know, actually, Mr. Coops, I think we can get that done before the end of the fiscal year, so it won't even show up in this budget because we can do that. We're gonna have a surplus at the end of the year anyway, so we can.
No, I think if we direct that show, I think that shows the community that we get these great businesses come in here like In-N-Out and Dunkin' Donuts, and we're expecting more. And then not to be able to present them a community that doesn't have that kind of a competition.
Yeah, I mean, Beth, let's see if we can make that happen just between now and the end of the budget year and see. We'll take a look at it, you know. So,
Will do.
You know, Jeff, one of the questions I had for you was, you know, over the past couple of years, City Council has been pretty dormant in terms of travel. No contract cities, no stuff in when we went to Sacramento. Are there any carryover funds from the?
Yeah, no, I mean, we just didn't spend it. We're gonna budget for a normal year this year going forward as far as contracts. Starting with, I hear contract cities is gonna go the middle of September this year. So I presume that'll be the beginning of what will probably be a normal year budgeting. So we restored that money. Yeah, we made some savings and we're good. And you'll see it as part of the book savings that we have for this fiscal year. But next year, I think we get back to normal with contract cities, the league conference, and the legislative tour of Sacramento and the other stuff that we do generally. So,
yeah, I'd like to see that come back. It's an advantage if we attend those things, but you know, with the COVID, that was all put on the back burner and kind of forgotten.
No, I mean, I think frankly, we just saved the money, and we've restored it for the coming year, so we're okay. Yeah.
Mayor, also, I think they're setting aside money for you to go to Mexico.
Well, God bless.
Is that a one-way ticket, Sonny, or 2?
Make it round trip.
I can feel the love, Sonny.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a couple questions to PJ.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. Hey, PJ, just a couple questions. The first one is in the presentation, you spoke about the soccer field and you gave a an update on that. Could you repeat that? I didn't, I wrote here to repeat that because I guess I didn't capture it well.
Okay, yes. So we have in the budget $2 million from general fund money, which was originally from the sale of the water system. And we know the complications there. So it's been carried over for several years. So that now is officially in the budget. So that project, a multi-use sports field, synthetic turf, if this budget gets approved as is happening no matter what at Sims Park year 2. We have a current grant application in with the state for, I believe it's $5.5 million, right around there, which includes that multi-sports field update to Sims Park and includes a complete renovation of the auditorium, the outdoor courtyard area, the interior of the whole community center. So if we get that grant, either way, we're going to use $500,000 from Measure A, whether the city's funding the $2 million or this other grant's funding that. $500,000 will be used for Measure A. But if we get it, so then we'll have a floating $2 million there that from the general fund. What I recommended was that we move that, because we know we have another capital improvement project coming up that's on our radar, to the senior youth center project for future allocation there, if we get that grant. We should know by this summer whether or not we got that grant, but either way, the multi-use sports field, synthetic turf will be happening if the budget is approved as is.
Okay, sounds good, PJ. So no matter what, 2022 groundbreaking for that field. Perfect. Let me ask you another question. Relations to the senior center and youth center. When did we first begin this project? When did it become a priority?
2016 or 2017, whenever that priority project list was approved, was when we started looking at different options on everything that was on that list. And again, that list, there was community input. It's a general guideline. So because all of our 4 projects on the list were jumbo projects, which in a perfect world, we'd complete all of them, but it's going to be tough. So we have aspects of each of those projects in different pots right now that we're working on. And that's how we got to a multi-generational community center.
So those both projects kind of came about at the same time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. And then the last one, and I don't expect for you to answer at this time, but more so if you could get some research for it. Can you look into those playground covers that cover the playground facilities, like the outdoor ones, so that the children don't burn their hands or their feet or get like those burns when they slide down a hot summer day on those slides.
The shade covers?
The shade covers?
Yep.
Yeah. Can you look into what that pricing would look like for those and then get back to us on that? That's it, sir. I appreciate your answers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Victor. So the shade covers, is that something we've ever had before, PJ?
Not specifically on our playgrounds. However, it is a definite need. The community has given input over the years on it. We do have the shade covers at the pool, not directly covering the pool, but it's covering the audience area on the outdoor pool. So there are, it has been on our radar for a little bit of if we can implement the shade covers. So I can definitely get those prices.
Okay. I guess I'm old school. I burned my hands when I was a kid. Why can't the kids of today burn their hands? But PJ, you've had the same experience. So.
Yes, sir.
It's a softer generation, Dan.
Well, I was out there when we put kids on that merry-go-round, go around 50 miles an hour and hope somebody didn't knock their head off. You know how that
went?
Mayor, it helps. I did too. I got burned as well.
I know.
Mr. Mayor, since the
Yes,
others
Mr. Armato.
kept the meeting going. I thought we were-
Oh, if that was your goal, you were successful.
But if that's just a couple, first off, I want to thank PJ to commend him for really putting some focus on the grant writing, and then again, getting hopefully getting a staff member to put some more time on that. Back as a kid too, at then Cogran Park, we used to play on a field that is now fenced up by the Downey Unified School District. And PJ or Jeff, is there ever a chance to find or get use of that property again?
From time to time, we've looked into it. It's owned by the Downey Unified School District.
Yes.
It is currently leased to the Los Angeles County Office of Education for a secondary school. So from time to time, we've reached out to them. They have not shown any interest in selling. We have had some preliminary concept drawings on potentially adding sports fields in that general area. So we do have those designs. It is always on our radar if the time would come. But again, it's a large property purchase. We've looked at different pricing recently at what it may cost to get a property like that. But it is on our radar. It always has been, as being adjacent to Thompson Park.
All right. The second relates to the auditorium quickly here. Once we clear COVID here and get back into normal activity, hopefully, you do have staffing to use that facility more often, correct? There's enough time dedicated for that.
You're speaking of the Civic Auditorium at City Hall?
Yes, Civic, yes.
Yes, and we've been fortunate enough, due to Jeff and the City Council support, to maintain our Parks and Recreation staff at reasonable levels during this pandemic. And we've been keeping them on staff. They are still there. And yeah, as soon as we can open up, we're very frustrated with the restrictions for any of our indoor facilities. I've updated the council on that. And as soon as we're able to, we're getting calls every single day. We want to start opening back up. But yes, we're still staffed. The budget calls for a full staffing of the auditorium as well as the department.
Yeah, those are specifically skilled people. We didn't want to lose them. So
Yeah. All right. Just one quick one for Beth then, and then I'm done. Beth, when I was looking in your section of the budget, when it came to the organization chart, I know that the building division is, contractors. So, but I've always treated them like staff. And when I saw the organization chart, and I know within the body of the text, there's reference to the building division budget and so on. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing that as part of the organization chart. I mean, it could be specially noted that they're contractors or something, or just include a building division. So that to me is just again recognition for a great staff over there. Definitely, Jamie's doing an awesome job, and that we know that they are under you. So
that's easy.
I just noted that. That's all.
Yeah, we can make that happen easily.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I think we've pretty well exhausted all the questions for today. We'll develop some more.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry if I can interrupt.
Yes.
We did have a raised hand from Julia Emerson. It has since been lowered. Not sure if.
Well, if she's available for comment, put her on.
You're very kind. I accidentally pressed the button. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for noticing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I will note at this time as well that I forgot to mention during the public comment portion that we did receive one public comment prior to the meeting from Mr. Ken Letourneau, and that was distributed to the City Council and made available to the public on the website. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Myra. All right, Ms. Emerson, you have the floor.
No, she's It was an accident, Mr. Mayor. Yeah,
Okay, I don't want to omit anybody.
yeah.
Thank you.
Unless she wants to do a solo, that's easy.
There we-
Tell you what, happy Public Works Week. How about that? That's for Len.
That's very good. All right, so we're going to adjourn this meeting to May 6th, Thursday, 2 o'clock. And we'll continue this discussion of the item. And this meeting stands adjourned at 4:55 in the afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.